Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the University of Abuja, now Yakubu Gowon University. Today's maiden public lecture series is organized by the Abuja Leadership Center, a third-fund center of excellence in public governance and leadership, University of Abuja. As part of its mandate to advance scholarship and address contemporary governance challenges, the center has instituted this public lecture series to showcase findings from the scholarly works of distinguished alumni. This lecture will examine one of the most critical issues in higher education governance, administration, drawing on research spanning over 3 decades. I would urge you to sit back and listen to the stimulating and enriching lecture that will be unfolding any moment. But before then, permit me to recognize the presence of the distinguished personalities who are here to grace this occasion this morning. Let me begin by welcoming our chief host, an erudite scholar, a distinguished academic, and respected thought leader. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a resounding welcome to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Hakeem Babatunde Fawemi. We are particularly honored by the presence of our distinguished guest lecturer, a man of outstanding accomplishments in public service and national development. I'm talking about the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, on the person of Architect Dr. Sonny Echono. We have the representative of the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, Professor Abdullahi Yusuf Ribadu, one of our own, who is here ably represented by Professor Haruna Lawal. We also have our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Professor Rosemary Udeozo. Our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration is also here. Would like to welcome Professor Muhammad Umaru Ndagi. The Acting Registrar for our great university and Secretary to Council, Malam Sambo Mohammed. Our Basa is sitting close to him. You're welcome, our Basa, Dr. Shiva Ray Kondong. Well, because we would not like to waste much of your time, and we have very serious business ahead of us. Of course, recognizing the presence of other distinguished personalities, very, very important to us. But at this moment, we'll be recognizing their presence as time goes on. In the meantime, I would like to especially welcome every one of you who has found time out from a very busy schedule to be here today. We have our deans, directors and heads of department, our great Nigerian students. And of course, the ES did not come here alone. He is here with a very strong retinue of people who are supporting him. I'm talking about friends and well-wishers and senior academics who are here to help him grace this occasion. We shall be recognizing their presence one after another as time goes on. But in the meantime, may I have the pleasure to invite the director of the Abuja Leadership Center to come forward for his welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Professor Abdulhamid Suleiman Ozohu.
The Executive Secretary, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Dr. Echono, the Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, Professor Fawahimi, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics, Professor Rosemary Uduozo, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Professor Mohamed Dagi, the representative of the National Universities Commission, erudite discussants of this lecture, distinguished professors, staff, our beloved students and alumni of the Abuja Leadership Center, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, history is being made today, and therefore it brings me great joy and honor to welcome all of you to the threshold of this historic event, the Abuja Leadership Center's public lecture series. The Abuja Leadership Center is a creation of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund with the mandate to advance excellence in public governance and leadership. Pursuant to this mandate, the TENSA has drawn leaders from all walks, public and private, local and international, for advanced training on leadership, public governance, public policy, strategic studies, and military studies. Through its various postgraduate programs, the center has produced graduates, some of whom have generated research reports that are worth sharing with the reading public. To this end, we are gathered here today to witness the maiden edition of the public lecture by the alumni of the Abuja Leadership Center. The center's public lecture series is an initiative that provides alumni a platform to publicly share the findings of their doctoral thesis and the policy implication of their recommendation in addressing the challenges of our lived experience as a nation. Therefore, the distinguished alumni lecture series on research findings seeks to achieve two crucial objectives. One, to expand the banquet of communion of town and gown. This objective is anchored on the conviction that the gap between knowledge, society, and leadership in Africa, particularly Nigeria, has contrasted more than it has contracted. Thus, this lecture is one of the pull factors for closing this unfortunate gap. Two, to reverse the age-long practice of trapping intellectual works in inaccessible bookshelves and ultimately receiving the priority attention of dust and cockroaches. This objective is consistent with the Education Repository Data Bank policy of the Federal Government of Nigeria. This lecture series ensures that cutting-edge doctoral theses are publicly presented, published, and shared with critical stakeholders. Incidentally, the guest lecturer today is a household name in the Nigerian education sector. When he indicated interest to take the first turn in this lecture series, it did not come to us as a surprise, rather a bold relief that his intellectual resourcefulness, coupled with decades of practical experience in public service, will set the benchmark for the center's subsequent outing. I cannot end this welcome address without acknowledging the focused leadership of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Hakeem Babatunde Fawahimi, who, within few months of his assumption of office, has brought peace and stability to our university. On behalf of the university, community, staff and students of the Leadership Center, I thank you for sparing time from your very busy schedule to be part of this epoch-making event as I welcome you once again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for that insightful welcome address. Please let's have another round of applause for the Director, Abuja Leadership Center. May I now respectfully invite the Vice Chancellor of our great university for his remarks. Please let's welcome him as he proceeds to the podium.
The Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, who incidentally is our honorary guest lecturer for today, Architect Dr. Sunday Echono, the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, ably represented, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Professor Rosemary Dozo, Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Muhammad Indagi, the Acting Registrar of the University, Malam Sambu Muhammad, the Bossa of the University, Madam Shivare Kondon, the Acting University Librarian, Dr. Florence Agbese, our very distinguished zonal representatives on the board of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, the Commandant of the National Defense College, Rear Admiral Abdullahi Ahmed, here present, the Comptroller General of Immigration Service, ably represented, and special recognition to His Excellency, the former military governor of Plateau and Katsina states, who incidentally is the uncle to the guest speaker for today, a highly revered gentleman who I've adopted too as my own uncle. Very distinguished, His Excellency General Lawrence Onoja, retired, the Comptroller General of the Federal Fire Service, Muhammad Anas, ably represented, very distinguished members of the high echelon of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund here present, deans, heads of departments, distinguished professors, our very dear students, gentlemen of the Fourth Estate of the realm, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Governing Council, ably led by distinguished Senator Dr. Larewaju Teju Osho, on behalf of Senate, management, staff, and the entire students of the University of Abuja, now Yakubu Gowon University, I want to welcome you all to the maiden edition of the Abuja Leadership Center Public Lecture Series. Today is a special day, very auspicious, because the person giving today's lecture is an intellectual giant, a career and a seasoned administrator, career civil servant par excellence, a man who has walked through the corridors of the civil service, from the lowest to the highest, former president of the Architects Society of Nigeria, former permanent secretary, Federal Ministry of Agriculture, former permanent secretary, Federal Ministry of Communication, which he capped as the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Education. That is where our paths crossed. So that is a man in no less statute, and who is the right peg in the right hole. Round peg in the round hole. Because of his extent of knowledge in the procurement area, and which of course we know as an interventionist agency, TED Fund is highly involved in that on daily basis. Apart from the fact that he's an architect and a builder, he knows the statutory provisions of what to do. So he's the best person for the job. And he's no other person but our own distinguished boss, architect, doctor of the University of Abuja, seasoned alumnus. So I'm proud to say that. Sunday Echono, PhD, University of Abuja. He is giving the lecture today. And I'm very proud to be here, and I will tell you why, for so many reasons. The topic is very apt, and it is a topic that any university governing council and management should be interested in listening. Apart from the fact that he was the permanent secretary, which is the administrative head of the Ministry of Education for a long time, he has done a PhD thesis in that area, which means he's well-schooled, and today we want to share in his wealth of experience, in his deep thoughts, in-depth thoughts with him. And I think that should strike a responsive chord and should generate discourse amongst the leadership of universities whenever they meet, to say, let's look at what Dr. Echono has put forward and see how we could navigate it to get the best selection process for universities. I'm a product of it not too long ago, and I know that somehow some councils are beginning to politicize the process. So he's going to tell us in a very empirical and factual manner what he thinks about it today. And I think that is very important that we sit back, listen to him, pay attention to him. I want to thank the facilitators of this program, ably led by the director of the Abuja Leadership Center, Professor Ozohu Suleiman, for putting this together. And I want to thank all participants for attending. I implore you to relax, pay attention, and I wish you the very best while our very seasoned and erudite scholar gives us the best of what he knows. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please another round of applause for our Vice Chancellor for that beautiful address. While we are making progress, let me quickly recognize the presence of some other distinguished personalities who are here seated with us this morning. I would like to specially recognize the presence of the Dean of the Faculty of Law of our great university, Professor Uwakwe Abugu. We also have the Director, Academic Planning Unit, Professor Otaki Alanana. The Dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies is also here, Professor K.M. Waziri. Well, the Vice Chancellor has taken time out to recognize the presence of some of our very distinguished personalities here, and I will crave your indulgence that suffices at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome ourselves to this very auspicious public lecture this morning. A round of applause all for ourselves. We have been patient enough, but what we require this patience for is for the next couple of hours where we shall listen to our great lecturer who will be presenting the public lecture any moment. Before then, I would like to call to the podium the orator of the university for the citation of our guest lecturer. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's welcome Professor Dr. Awari Toma. A round of applause for him. I know he will always say that name is not well pronounced, but this is an opportunity for him to get it well. Thank you.
I won't begin with my name this morning, Dr. Habib. The Vice Chancellor has already said that he has adopted some of our dignitaries here as uncle. And you also know that whoever he adopts as his uncle, he's my own uncle, he's our own uncle. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Agoma Awaritoma. I am the Department Theatre Arts. That's why I'm doing this job. But we have a very distinguished personality here before us today, and I'm glad to be associated with this event. Truly, we have a man of timber and caliber standing before us. Architect Sunday, St. Echono, PhD, is a seasoned public administrator and a professional architect. He currently serves as the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, the latest of several leadership positions he has held, including Secretary, Implementation Committee on National Housing Policy, 1991 to 1995, Secretary, Special Projects Task Force, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, 1992 to 1995, Secretary, Committee on Lands and Housing, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, 1993 to 1995, Chief Executive Architect, 1993 to 1994, Special Assistant to Permanent Secretary, 1999, Head, Council Affairs and Parastatals, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, 2000 to 2004, Secretary, Ministerial Tenders Board, 2004 to 2005, Director of Procurement, Federal Ministries of Defense, Water Resources, Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development, as well as Power. Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Communication and Education. With 35 years of exemplary service, Architect Echono has been at the epicenter of policy formulation and reforms in the Nigerian civil service and its agencies, including review of administrative guidelines in the Nigerian civil service, harmonization of financial regulations with Public Procurement Act 2007, National Housing and Urban Development Policies, National Maintenance Policy, National Building Code and Fire Safety Code, procurement reforms and due process guidelines for Nigeria, modernization of the Nigerian Armed Forces, review of federal government projects, implementation framework, agricultural transformation agenda, policies implemented, national ICT sector roadmap and e-government master plan, education for change, a ministerial strategic plan, revitalization and repositioning of teaching profession in Nigeria, etc. He is a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, and following his service in various capacities, including Honorable General Secretary from 2001 to 2003, and 2 successive terms as the Chairman of the Disciplinary Committee of the Depression from 2009 to 2013. He attained the pinnacle of the profession as the 28th President of the Nigerian Institute of Architects from 2019 to 2021. A founding member and trustee of the Procurement Professionals Association of Nigeria, he is a recipient of several awards of excellence and commendation by the federal government, including OON, Officer of the Order of the Niger, and has presented over 50 papers at national and international fora. He also served on several boards and councils, including Board of Architectural Education in Nigeria, Architects Registration Council of Nigeria, National Environmental Standards, Regulations Enforcement and Administration, International Institute for Tropical Agriculture, Nigerian Postal Service, Universal Basic Education Commission, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Global Partnership for Education, etc. He attended several management courses and workshops at top institutions across the globe, including but not limited to Harvard Business School, USA, Oxford University, United Kingdom, University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, Columbia University, United States of America, etc., etc., etc. He is currently running a PhD program at the International School for Social and Business Studies, ISSBS, Celje, Slovenia, in addition to his already acquired master's degree in architecture, business administration, and procurement management. Your Excellencies, eminent personalities here present, consummate professors and academics, esteemed staff, reputable students of the University of Abuja, gentlemen of the press, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with a standing ovation, help me welcome to this microphone a seasoned public administrator, an accomplished architect, a reputable civil servant, and exemplary gentleman, architect Sunday St. Echono, PhD, the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Keep the applause going, please. Keep it going. Thank you very much. Agoma, Awaitoma is my name. Keep the applause going as he's coming to the microphone. Please keep it going. You know that he's now my uncle. Please keep the applause going. You're welcome, sir.
The Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, now Yakubu Gowon University, my dear brother and friend, Professor Hakeem Babatunde Fayemi, Deputy Vice Chancellors and Principal Officers of the University, the Registrar, the Bursar, and the Librarian, the Director of the Abuja Leadership Center, representatives of the NUC, the Commandant General of the National Defense College, the Commandant of the National Forest Service, honorary faculty members of the university, members of the Board of Trustees of TED Fund here represented, my colleagues from the management of the fund, the alumni of the Abuja Leadership Center, the president. I apologize for the delay in acknowledging the president of the Academic Staff Union of Universities. You know, TED Fund is a creation of ASU, so anytime we have opportunity of speaking, we remember our roots. So I want to specifically acknowledge the president of ASU president. Our very dear students, gentlemen of the press, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As they say in Nigeria, permit me to stand on the very well-established protocol, but I must, again, just as the VC did, acknowledge two people particularly. From the home front, General Lawrence Onoja led a team of very prominent members of Fukidoma. They are here in their, you can see from their hats, the Doma black and white, black and red color. And also my mentor, who guided me through this research program, Professor Moti, please. I want to personally recognize you. So as you've been told, my name is Echono, and I undertook to take a PhD program at the Abuja Leadership Center. What I'll be talking to you about today is a well-known challenge of governance of our federal universities. And the subject of my inquiry was to find out, or to ask the question, does the way we select our vice chancellors and other principal officers have any effect on how well those universities are governed? And essentially, I'll be sharing with you 3 years of data from 20 federal universities spread across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. I know this presentation has 2 facets. It is beneficial for the students who will have the opportunity of also presenting their research findings, so it's a bit half academic. But more importantly, as the Vice Chancellor rightly said, it will also have implications for policy as well as practical guides for university administrators, the governing councils, and so on and so forth. So the study investigates the relationship between leadership selection process and governance outcomes in federal universities in Nigeria. It aims to explore how the various methods used in selecting university leaders impact the effectiveness of governance and the overall academic environment. Given Nigeria's complex socio-political landscape, understanding these dynamics is crucial for developing robust governance frameworks and that will enhance institutional integrity, accountability, and performance. So a little bit about a background and problem statement. Traditionally, we all know that universities are established to provide higher education, to promote research and community service. All over the world, universities are respected as centers for intellectual life, specializing not just in research, teaching, and the dissemination of knowledge, but in creating new ideas, new knowledge, new ways of doing things. They serve as trustees of the norms and values that constitute the tenets of a people's civilization. Indeed, they are often called ivory towers because they are seen as that sanctuary where eggheads, great minds populate, think, create, imagine, evolve, innovate, and come up with solutions to both national and global problems. They also find new ways of doing things that lead to the creation of new products and services that the public enjoy that turn around to improve their standard of living. So, universities are supposed to be removed from the madness of the larger society. It's some kind of, if you like, an imaginary heaven where there is freedom of expression, there is freedom of creation of knowledge and also of sharing. And historically, it's been established that before independence in 1960, Nigeria has one of the best university systems in the world. But unfortunately, since then, we have witnessed a gradual decline. A lot of it has to do with neglect by successive administrations in the areas of funding. Others have been asserted to so many other problems, including inadequate academic staff, inadequate infrastructural facilities, the brain drain syndrome that have seen some of our best brains migrate to other countries. Until very recently, and again we remain grateful to ASU, but one of the challenges we used to have when I was gathering this data was the issue of frequent academic disruptions through strikes. But thanks to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for the past 3 years, our universities have remained stable and there has been no strike. There are other issues relating to institutional corruption. I'll be talking a little bit about that. Insecurity, weak administrators and poor capacity development of academic staff, political interference in university administration, poor internally generated revenue, and of course the dilemma of academic or university autonomy. We call it a dilemma because the society wants some level of oversight into what happens here, particularly by the federal government that establishes it. But at the same time, you need a university to exercise some degree of autonomy to be able to deliver on its mandate. So to what extent this interplay plays is one of the issues that will be coming up later in the presentation. But on the whole, there is a general perception of poor university governance in Nigeria. And this arose from the ineffective and inefficient manner universities were administered, leading to suboptimal performance and unsatisfactory learning outcomes. This has manifested in falling academic standards and quality. Some say this is debatable, but there are empirical evidence. Again, I mentioned the issues that I talked about, the brain drain and why a lot of our lecturers are leaving due to poor remuneration, inadequate facilities for them to express themselves, reduced global competitiveness. And nothing shows this more than the issue of international ranking and our failure in the area of internationalization. When some of us went to school, majority of our lecturers actually were from outside Nigeria. We also have so many international students from various countries, not only in Africa, but even in Europe coming to Nigeria to study. Today, given the quality of some of our hostels, given the issues around security, very few foreigners are coming to our country. And the type of wages we pay, by the time you convert it to dollars, not even from Togo or Benin, will you get lecturers who will be willing to come here. We also note a particular milestone, that when, in the early 80s, we returned to democracy, the federal government took one major step to address issues of selection of vice chancellors. In that period, so many vice chancellors were appointed through very competitive merit-based systems. But the government, by deliberate policy, decided to post them to states other than their own. So you go to Ibadan, the vice chancellor is from Akwa Ibom. You go to Benin, the vice chancellor. You go to Owerri, the vice chancellor is from Plateau, and so on. So having been selected on merit, their postings were done in such a way as to reflect the objectives of federal character, the objective of national unity, that people from anywhere in the country should be able to hold positions in others. And I'm going to be talking a great deal about the localization of our tertiary institutions as I move on. So what are the indices? Currently, Nigeria lags behind most developing countries. In Africa, out of 54 countries, Nigeria is ranked 23rd. You won't believe it, in terms of educational advancement. And on a global scale, about 191, almost at the very end of the ladder. This can be found in the World Bank Population Review of 2025. Yet, Nigeria has a very youthful population, and there are inherent demographic dividends from that. As other countries around the globe suffer from aging population and even negative population growth, Nigeria, if we prepare our students well, we provide the manpower that will fill that gap in the global economy. And with technology today, they don't even need to move into those countries. They can stay here in Nigeria, still work, earn income, feed their families, and contribute to the growth of our economy. Unfortunately, this reflection, if you like, of the federal character principle in the administration of the universities, which was enforced for some period, did not last. Today, there has been sharp detraction from the practice, And this has produced a baleful harvest of deepening localization, declining academic and research outputs, and growing perceptions of irrelevance of our institutions. Since then, the leadership selection process in the Nigerian federal universities have been marred by the melee of favoritism, nepotism, political lineage, corruption, in some cases even getting to violent exchanges, creating trauma, and obvious cases of manipulation of university ex-ante laws. These have direct negative impacts on the governance outcomes in these institutions. The federal government, as I said, adopted the federal character principle for a purpose. We're experiencing issues of majority domination, for example, either in terms of population, in terms of gender. We had a situation for so many years after Grace Alele Williams became the first female vice-chancellor of a Nigerian university. It took nearly 20 years for the second female vice-chancellor to emerge. But again, we've gone so far now. Today we have more than 30 female vice-chancellors in our universities, and the number is increasing. So the lack of inclusivity and diversity, particularly against women and marginalized groups, encourages division along ethnic and, unfortunately, also religious lines. Now we have situations where within our campuses, people are getting into camps, into groups. When it is time for this election, you see even our religious worship places become centers of discussing where the next VC should emerge from. And when he appears from somewhere, I remember a case, and I don't know, I try not to mention examples in this presentation, but I recall a very funny episode in Jos, where a vice-chancellor was appointed, and the petition came in straight saying that, Plateau this is a largely Christian state, and they have gone to appoint a Muslim from Kebbi to be the vice-chancellor, when there were 4 candidates from Plateau State. Unknown to them, even though the man's name sounds Muslim, he was a Christian. And yes, he was from Kebbi. So sometimes, for no reason, people complain, and that is one of the things we need to deal with in our country. The melee of localization fueled by ethnic and religious bigotry has persisted. So also the deterioration in the governance of Nigerian universities, exemplified by the steep decline in their global ranking. As we all see, every year, 3-4 different ranking agencies publish the performance of all universities across the globe. And this is even being done regionally now. Apart from the global rankings, you have African rankings and so on. And unfortunately, Nigeria does not have any university in our top 100 in the world. We are beginning to appear from the 600 percentile range, and this is something we need to do. So how did I carry out this study? Because the basic question that was asked, which is the research problem, is the fact that there is little empirical evidence on how selection method affects actual governance outcomes. How does the leadership selection process influence governance effectiveness in federal universities? So the study was conducted and guided by 4 research questions with also 4 objectives. And I will just focus on the objectives. They are similar to the questions. The objectives were to examine the current leadership selection process in Nigerian public universities and their impact on university governance. To investigate the relationship between leadership selection process and academic excellence, research productivity, and innovation in Nigerian public universities. To determine the influence of such negative factors as political interference, nepotism, and corruption on leadership selection process and university governance. And finally, to develop a framework for improving leadership selection process and university governance. I also came up with 3 hypotheses. The 2 main hypotheses state that there is a significant positive correlation between transparent and inclusive leadership selection processes and effective governance, while the second is that political interference, nepotism, and exclusion in the leadership selection process result in poor governance, academic decline, corruption, and discontent among stakeholders in Nigerian federal universities. Of course, as in every thesis, there was a null hypothesis that states that leadership selection process has no significant impact on governance of federal universities in Nigeria. All these hypotheses were tested with empirical evidence in the course of the research. And now, because it's an academic environment, it is also good for me to give some insight into the theoretical framework for this work. As a PhD research, I studied 4 different prevalent theories to select what I consider the most suitable philosophical framework to underpin and guide the study. The first was the principal agent theory. Again, this is, as the name implies, in the context of a university, when you talk about the principal and the agent, an agent is supposed to work in the interest of the principal who engages him. And the principal and agent in this context can either be the visitor, the government that establishes the university as a principal, or even funding agencies that give funds to you, while the university itself and the administration can be the agent. It can also be a relationship between the principal officers of a university and the wider university staff, where the principal officers represent the principal and the other staff are the agents. Another reflection of this principal-agent relationship is the university governing councils, who can serve as principals, while the vice-chancellor and his other supporting staff will be the agents. I believe the principal-agent theory can help explain issues in university governance, such as accountability, efficiency in managing the moral hazard, because sometimes where the agent has more information than the principal, you now have information asymmetry, and then the moral hazard of how do you now create efficiency if you want to effectively, so you spend more time and resources trying to manage that relationship. So the application of principal-agent theory in university governance highlights several challenges, as I said, including information asymmetry, and also where the agents have their own interests, which may not align with those of the principals. It may entail additional efforts and costs for the principal to monitor and control agents' actions, which can reduce the overall efficiency of the organization. Then there is also the institutional theory, which everybody in the university is very familiar, because institutions such as universities are shaped by and they respond to their environments. This theory focuses on the role of institutions such as the norms, the values, and the regulations in influencing organizational behavior and decision making. The key aspects that relate to university governance reflect the fact that universities tend to adopt similar structures. You have your governing councils, you even adopt the committee system, you have identical principal officers, you have your convocations, your congregation, and so on, which is similar in nature to other universities. So there is some degree of uniformity that is applicable in this field. And you do this because you want to gain acceptance and legitimacy. You also want to be able to attract resources from outside. In trying to maintain legitimacy, you try also to conform to societal expectations and norms. This is why the issue of relevance to your community comes to play, which is the third leg of a university's raison d'etre. And the third basis for this theory is the fact that universities have very unique cultures, the way you celebrate, the nuances and the things that you do, the culture of a university that influence your governance and decision-making process. And the implications of this theory for governance is that universities must navigate the tension between maintaining autonomy and responding to external demands, as I said earlier, for accountability, to balance the competing interests of the various stakeholders within the university environment, including faculty, students, administrators, and external bodies, while fostering a culture of transparency and participation. Universities are expected to promote transparency and accountability in whatever they do. The third theory I explored is the stewardship theory. This points that leaders and managers act as stewards of the organization. It emphasizes responsibility in leadership. It expects you to prioritize the long-term interests of the organization or the institution and the well-being over your personal gain. And here I'm talking to the university councils in particular. This approach emphasizes responsibility, accountability, and a commitment to serving the organization and its stakeholders. In the context of university governance, stewardship theory suggests that university leaders, including vice chancellors and governing council members, should prioritize the long-term interests of the institution over short-term gains. So even when you are making specific decisions, you should ask yourself, even though it is convenient to do it this way, is it in the overall interest of this university in the long run? This perspective view of the institution as a going concern is so critical to decision-making in an academic environment. University leaders should also manage resources, including financial, human, and the physical resources in a responsible and sustainable manner. And they should foster a culture of service, encouraging faculty and staff to prioritize the needs of students and the larger or broader community. The fourth theory that I explored, which was the one I actually eventually chose, is the stakeholder theory. This theory, which originated in the business management field, posits that organizations have responsibilities to various groups. Previously, business, they will tell you the basis for every business is to maximize the profit for the shareholders. That was the theory that persisted for decades. But when this school of thought came, it said no, for a business to remain successful, you must also prioritize the interests of other stakeholders other than the owners of the business. And these other stakeholders include, first, your employees. It is how well you make your employers happy that they put in their best that will translate to increased performance and also increase bottom line. The second are your customers. Repeat purchases are encouraged by the fact that the customer is happy with the product. Even your reputation. The quality of your graduates will attract more students to apply to your institution. People who, in the case of businesses, things like people who supply you goods, those who are your distributors. But in the university, we are talking about students. We're talking about lecturers, your alumni, the community in which you are located, and so on and so forth. Indeed, even those your industry partners, how do you cultivate, how do you encourage your staff to get grants? How do you partner, collaborate with the private sector to take your students, not only for students' programs, but also to employ them when they finish? How do you get them to invest in your institution? So the stakeholder theory, with regards to university governance, will promote a more inclusive and responsive decision-making process. And some of the benefits are obvious. Include, when you prioritize students' needs and interests, universities can create more effective learning environments with improved learning outcomes, meaning that our universities must become student-centric. not necessarily the lecturers and the non-academic staff who populate it or who take decisions on behalf of the students. If you put the students at the center of decision making in a university, you are likely to get it right. Two, it enables you to enhance faculty and staff engagement. Leadership is not a one-man show. The more you involve your staff, the more you engage them, and I'm going to suggest ways that will be done towards the end of my submission. It will lead first to a greater job satisfaction because the staff will feel part of the institution. They truly belong, they are consulted. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything, every staff, because by nature, university is a center for a conflict of ideas. Because if you bring 3 professors here, all 3 of them will have different ideas of how one thing should be done. Yet, being able to synthesize is key. But more importantly, the fact that you consulted them, that you heard them out, that you heard their option, will give them a sense of belonging. They are likely to accept that outcome, carry it forward, and implement it. And there will be that job satisfaction, a sense of community that we belong and this belongs to us. Also, by engaging with local communities, universities can build trust and foster partnerships that benefit both parties. It could lead to increased accountability. Considering the interests of multiple stakeholders can promote transparency and accountability, because you'll be watching. If you are a leader in that context, you know that everybody is watching you. So you want to see that whatever decision you take, you can defend before everybody. Of course, like any theory, it also has its own challenges. And one of the major challenges is managing so many interests. So it takes time. Decision making slows down. Because if you have to consult so many interest groups before you take a decision, sometimes it will take a long time to achieve that decision. And then you may have conflicting interests, where some of the groups now are decidedly in opposing factions. What do you do in that circumstance? But again, so issues around university autonomy that requires you to go strictly by the rules and intents and precepts of the university, rather than what is now emerging as a consultative process, will be something you need to navigate when you're applying stakeholder theory. But again, I gave some reasons why I felt this was the best of the 4, even though they are all self-reinforcing and they had various applications in the course of the study. Now, the literature review. This took a huge time in terms of the preparations for it, and it was very extensive. In the course of that literature review, I will just tell you a little bit about the gaps that I identified in the literature, not to go through the whole gamut of it. And first, the first gap is in terms of the geographical gap. Many of the studies that I looked at were focusing on specific regions or even specific universities, which may not provide a comprehensive understanding of the issues across the entire country. Existing research primarily focused on Nigeria without comparison to other countries with similar higher education contexts, which I try to address in this thesis. So because I believe there will be a need for comparative studies to be able to see how different governance models influence decision-making, influence performance, and governance. Then the under-exploration of stakeholders' perspectives. While stakeholder involvement was noted in almost all the studies as crucial, there is insufficient qualitative research that digs deep into the perspectives of various stakeholders, particularly the students and the non-academic staff. So by the time you pull only academic staff, it's like you are only looking at one segment of the problem. It is true that a university is established for an academic purpose. But sometimes the ability to look at a problem independently is better with external factors who are not involved in the process. And that is why engaging students and non-academic staff could prove useful. We also observed that a lot of the research were qualitative in nature, and I recognize the need to utilize qualitative We are quantitative in nature, so I recognize the need to utilize qualitative methodologies, such as interviews and focus groups, to gather in-depth insights from students, faculty, and administrative staff to understand their views on leadership selection and governance effectiveness. The next gap I saw was methodological. Again, I hinted at it already, that most studies tend to be cross-sectional. You're just taking the picture at a particular point in time. But if you want to actually understand how leadership selection impacts governance over time, you need a longitudinal view. You need to see what the impact has been over time and over various administrations to see how a particular process can impact the governance outcomes based on either the errors or the decisions that were taken in that process. Then there is an obvious gap of technological changes. Unfortunately, we are still lagging behind, even in Nigeria, in this regard. We are not adopting technology to aid our selection process. In other countries, we know that once you use technology, it's easy, it's more transparent, it is more accessible, anybody can apply at any time on the platform. People are scoring, you don't need to lobby anybody, it will be in real time, and it will even guarantee the integrity of that process. But we are yet to explore that. So we need not only to conduct longitudinal studies that follow specific universities over several years, but also examine how changes in leadership and selection process affect governance over that period. There is a need to explore the role of technology in the leadership process, including the use of online platforms for transparent candidate evaluations and the impact of digital governance practices. Then, diversity and inclusivity in leadership. Again, there is a lack of focus on the effects of diversity and inclusion in the leadership selection process and how this impacts governance. I suspect, because this is almost a peculiar problem to Nigeria, because when I looked at the cases in other countries, the political affiliation was a factor, but seldom do they get to the extent of, you want somebody from my community, from the village, you want the person from this tribe. You have situations, even sometimes, the tribe is not enough. There was a case of a university where one of the candidates was from the same town where the university was located, but he was seen as an outsider because he has been spending all his time teaching in a university somewhere else. They classified him as an external candidate. And external candidates are not welcome in our Nigerian context. Then another gap was in the area of assessment of governorship frameworks. Not many have been done, and then also the role of external influences. Again, the impact of external influences such as government policies, funding bodies, and international partnerships on leadership selection and governance is underexplored. We have not really done enough to say if we want to attract grants or funding, either from donor agencies or from individual businessmen or firms, the conditions that they will impose, how does that impact our governance structure? How do we make ourselves even attractive for them to want to invest in our university? And how do we align our leadership selection process when they know that some of the things that we do will be, there will be a lot of uncertainty of process, whereas where the guidelines are well established and the entire university community is involved. Again, I'm going to just mention another exception. Bayero University, for example, over the last 5 succession cycles, which I have studied, from Jega to the Abubakar Rashid to Yahuza, up till today, 1 year before the VC is appointed, everybody on campus knows who is going to be their next VC. Because they will have done town hall meetings, they will have examined the person's performance, they will have been monitoring his achievements, physical achievements. Again, one of the biggest challenges we have with our current assessment template is the fact that people are rewarded for occupying office, not what you do with it. Somebody say, because you have been a deputy vice chancellor, because you get 4 marks, because you have been this, you get 3 marks if you have been a director. For what? What did you do when you were there? You probably keeping students' results for years. You probably didn't do anything. You did not attract a single research grant. You are director of research, or you are a VC research and development. Yet, just because you occupy that office, they give you full marks. That cannot continue. That is not a merit system. We can acknowledge it, but let us have a tracking system that will say, even before you aspire to become a vice chancellor of a university, your track record should speak for you. And that track record should be verifiable. For academic purposes again, let me talk a little bit about the methodology that was used. The research philosophy for the study is rooted in pragmatism, and you can see the way I'm talking about it, with emphasis on the practical application of knowledge, and of course, understanding also the research context. Again, everybody talks about Creswell and all his postulations on this. The research employs a mixed methods approach, combining both qualitative and quantitative. In fact, it was a sequential mixed methods, where I started with the surveys, the questionnaires for the quantitative stage, and I went on to also have a qualitative stage where I had interviews, focus group, discussion with 8 established former vice chancellor, only one serving one, and administrators, to discuss in greater detail their experiences. And it was a very rich, in fact, I have some of those documents I'll be sharing as recommendations going forward. In selecting the institutions, 300 respondents was the target asset, based on, it was calculated based on a conference system and all of that. But the distribution is shown. Okay, we've gone too far, you're ahead of me, come back a little bit. You will see the distribution of the 300 in all the 6 geopolitical zones. In addition to that, I carried out empirical review. Several studies across Africa, Asia, North and South America, Europe, and China were revised with cross-analysis to identify similarities and differences in selection methods. I also had case studies of 12 universities, as I said, cutting across the first generation, the second and third generation, so that we see what the practices are. Some of these universities have been so old and set in their ways. They've become institutions to themselves and impervious to change. Others, because of the nature, the collection. I know a particular university where about 6 generations of former vice chancellors are still on their senate. I know when the person who was vice chancellor when you were admitted as a student is talking, you are now a professor in Senate, and they stay on the front row. I'm sure vice chancellors know what I'm talking about. So the analysis of the data was done. I had descriptive statistics, inferential statistics. I used t-test and Pearson's correlation coefficients. There was thematic analysis. I also used in vivo software. I carried out content analysis. I used SPSS, IKA, and another tool. So first, before I begin to go deep into what I did, is an understanding of what the current leadership selection process is. I will not bore you with it, but we all know what it is if we are involved in the academia. When the 6 months to the expiration of the tenure of an existing vice chancellor, the governing council is expected to place an advertisement and to state all the criteria. There is a guide provided by the ministry. There is a debate about the status of this guide relative to the university regulations, because 3 documents guide the selection process in our university. Every university has its enabling law, and embedded in that enabling law, a section of it also details how principals, officers are selected and their tenure and so on, conditions of service. We also have the Universities Act. I specifically chose the period to coincide with when the University Act was promulgated. So that was when we now had an order, a sequence, a system. And we also have the Federal Ministry of Education guidelines. I recall not too long ago, there was a lot of commotion in the sector over multiple interpretations of which should take prominence over the other. My position is that the law, which is an act, because there's a hierarchy of laws. We all know that the Constitution is the grand norm, followed by enactments, laws of the National Assembly, duly assented, and guidelines and other processes are secondary to these laws and provisions. That's my view, and it is supported by many legal authorities. But the eligibility criteria ought to be established and made transparent by the Governing Council and put out there. Unfortunately, the experience is that sometimes when Governing Councils begin to target a candidate beforehand, they design the cloth, the height of the length of the trouser, the breadth of the jacket is designed to fit that candidate. If the candidate does not have enough years of experience, they lower it. There's an application process, a search committee is set up, another major problem that we must solve and stop. It is anti-democratic. It is unreasonable to have the chairman of a governing council be the chairman of the selection committee. And when that report is finished, it now comes to him again as the chairman of the governing council to approve. There is no form of injustice that is worse than this. Because all the views of all the other members of the selection committee, which he will suppress, which he didn't like, will never get presented to the governing council. Because he will be presenting his own view. He might as well say, chairman, appoint VC for us. So we must change that in any new process. Of course, there is shortlisting by them. Sometimes they invite them for interview, a joint committee of council and senate. Then the governing council will appoint. Again, governing councils. Unfortunately, but this is true, many members of governing council see the selection of principal officers as the most lucrative aspect of their work. Because that is a time when everybody depends on you. And that is what is breeding the corruption in the system. So if you want to contest for the position of vice chancellor or any of the other principal officers, your first step is to go and look for a godfather. You may even need two, a political godfather, a financial godfather. And no, so it becomes a matter of highest bidder. I have seen a situation where the same selection committee ranked people first, second, and third. Then they now say when he went to the governing council, they picked the third. There was no report on the first and second what they did wrong or any security report or any disqualifying factor. So you have used parameters set by you and you have shortlisted candidates. What is the basis for you now to reject? They say they voted. And what does that mean? The only meaning to ordinary people like me why the thing has changed from number 3 to number 1 is because something has happened. So what are the key findings? Basically, to complete that process, in the case of state universities, they still need to present it to the governor to select. So it's the governor that ultimately selects. But in the case of federal universities, councils are empowered to even announce immediately they finish their process, and they only need to inform the visitor through the Minister of Education. This is being contested hotly at the highest levels of government, because the question is asked. You are presenting us with a fait accompli. It is something ASU fought for as part of academic autonomy. But when they realize that politicians are now dominating the governing councils, ASU themselves are even wondering whether this was the right move, that there should be no review. Because when they do something wrong and they announce it and the man is in place, it becomes more difficult to change. Because if you want to change now, other factors will come in. I discussed in the paper some of the major findings, and I may just gloss through this very quickly because this is important for the students. It may not be important for many of us who are interested in just the outcome of the findings. how I was able to triangulate the various methods that were used, and how to link my findings with existing literature. I omitted the literature review because I wanted to talk about it at this stage. So in this segment, the researcher will delve into the major themes identified during the research, linking them to the relevant academic literature, and articulating the contributions to the field of educational leadership and governance. The research identified that Nigerian federal universities employ various leadership selection processes. These processes include governing council appointment, search committee. I've mentioned a bit of that. Many universities rely on search committees that include faculty, alumni, and external stakeholders, while others just follow the scripture of the law. 2 members who are of governing council, 2 members of senate, who are not, and they just follow only very few. But some are more extensive. And the original intent of such parties is not to just limit it to the university environment, but to even look outside to see whether you can identify talent and somebody who, and in many countries, again, I know I'm talking to professors, I don't want to start a fight here, but if you ask me, one major consideration that we are missing is the fact that we are not matching the functions, the duties of a vice chancellor with the qualifications we are specifying in our checklist. Academic leadership, fantastic, the most primary of all qualifications. Because if you cannot set that goal, if you cannot lead in that area, then the university does not exist. But that is not the only rule of a vice chancellor. So you have a situation where we allocate so many marks for publications, for example. For how many years you have been as a professor? 20 years studying insects. We very due apologies. You have not managed 10 people. You have not engaged with anybody outside your faculty. You are a professor, you have your chair, you have your department. The highest number of people you've spoken to are 5. Then suddenly you are made a vice chancellor, you have to now start dealing with the National Assembly. You have to prepare and defend budgets. You have to be talking about research grants, attracting research grants. You are now trying to give partnerships with the private sector. It doesn't work overnight. So there is a misfit. Some of them are at sea. You are now faced with a procurement law that tells you you cannot do this, you cannot do that. And suddenly auditors are coming every day to blackmail you because you are not conversant with the rules and regulations, the financial regulations and all that. But those are the functions of vice chancellors. They are accounting officers. They are chairmen of tenders boards. And those must factor into how you select him. Otherwise, you are bringing a greenhorn who is now coming to learn on the job. Academic, in fact, the universities are even insulated already because the number of structures you have to defend and guide your academic, you have a whole vice chancellor in charge of academic. You have your committees, you have your deans, you have the entire Senate. So already there are investments in academic excellence. Not enough in these critical areas of management and leadership. Transparency in the selection process enhances stakeholder trust. It's a major factor that I was able to discover. That when they see that you have done the process well, everybody in the university will trust the leader. They will support him. They are more likely to work with him than when they perceive him as an imposition or serving a different interest. There is stability and continuity in a system where the selection process is structured. I gave an example of Bayero earlier. And I've given in my submission, when you see the printed one, the linkages to all the various sources where I drew these connections between the authors and what we were able to find. I was also able to find that leadership selection process positively correlates with academic excellence, with research productivity, with innovation, and sound financial management. In case of innovation, universities that include your commitments and your track record in innovation have reaped the benefits. A typical one, again, let me break the ice. FUTO, FUTA, the one in Mina, Federal University of Technology, as well as FUTA in Akure. These two institutions have specific, maybe because they are universities of technology, but they have specific requirements, and they put a lot of focus or weight on attracting research grants, on innovation. If you have you yourself own a patent, there are marks given to it. If you have nurtured students who have developed anything, you can report that and you get marks. And these same universities are coming first, second, and third in third fund national research grants because they have been able to entrench it in their selection process. Leaders who value and support research activities have been linked to increased research output as seen in initiatives fostering collaborations and providing funding for research projects. The study further revealed that leaders who emerge from inclusive selection processes promote innovative practices, facilitating a culture that encourages new ideas among faculty and students. So when you know it is the entire university that elected you, that you are a product of that environment, you hold yourself accountable to them. They also see you as an expression of their collective will. It's just like somebody who wins election properly and somebody who rigs election. The person who rigs election will tell you it's not your vote that we counted. After all, I paid for it. And he does not owe you anything. But those who are genuinely voted by the people and the outcome comes like that, the relationship is different. Then, let me just focus, I'm trying to rush down now, on some of the negative factors that I discovered in the course of the study. The issue of political interference, I'm going to talk about it in two segments. The first is that this has application in nearly all universities. It's just that in some cases they are not successful. In other cases, the impact is less than others. But there is political influence in nearly every selection process that have been taking place in the last 15 years. It is more where the governing council chair is a politician, where an academic or an administrator is the chair. It's slightly different. In many universities, if you do not belong to a particular political affiliation, you will not be appointed. I know a particular state where this religious thing we are talking about, people think when you say religion, they think it is only Christianity versus Islam. No. In a particular state, whether you are Anglican or Catholic is a factor in the selection process. If you do not belong to the right branch, you cannot be elected. Then we see on a very large scale issues around tribalism and favoritism. The federal character principle is being abused. There are many institutions where the vice chancellor, the registrar, the bursar, and even the librarian are all from the same state. In others, they are nominated by one strong man. And there are various examples. I don't want to name names. So the role of universities as melting pots to foster national unity and integration gets lost in the process. I'm glad the University of Abuja is not so. And I'm very happy. Because ordinarily, in the system that I'm talking about, my brother, you wouldn't have emerged though. Because you do not qualify in many grounds. You're not even from North Central or Abuja environs. And you were not in the university before. So you would have been knocked out long ago. But today, if you are a Nigerian, yes. Maybe because here is Abuja and it's the central seat of government, we are obeying federal character. I see from the composition of your principal officers that yes, we are obeying that. your DVC, Southeast, I'm seeing North Central, Northwest, Southwest. So, but in other universities, this is not the practice. When candidates are chosen based on connections rather than merit, it undermines the potential for qualified leaders to emerge. Then the issue of corruption. I talked a little bit about it already, but let me just emphasize the growing practice, and this is worrisome for me, in TED Fund. I have had situations where contractors actually confess to me that they are sponsoring candidates. They sponsor university candidates for vice chancellor. And why are they doing so? Because they know the moment they are able to put their man as a VC, all the contracts in that university will go to that contractor who sponsors. That's why I say you need both a political and financial, because their own influence will stop at the level of governing council. But to carry it forward, then, of course, involvement in elections. Again, this is controversial, but I must state it. When Atahiru Jega, a professor of repute and note, he was supposed to be here today, he sent his apologies to me. When he decided to involve university administrators in national elections, he was leveraging on the respect and the integrity that is attached to the academia, which is a normal thing all over the world. When you say this man is a professor, you expect that he will act at the highest level of integrity, accountability. And that's why he felt that our academic should assist him manage that process. They are usually the returning officers or who play this prominent role. But unfortunately, it is now impacting the selection of our vice chancellors. Politicians now, including governors, want to appoint vice chancellors not because they are interested even in anything happening around the school. They want to do so because when the election comes, they want to be a vice chancellor. Some go to the extent of wanting the man to be sent to their state, or they want to use that network so that they can exchange between states. And you know, when the ministry and the NUC try to select these people to serve with INEC, I know what we go through and the type of calls we get. So politicians are becoming interested in the position of vice chancellors for electoral purposes, not in the interest of the university. Then the role of staff unions, I'm glad the ASU president is here, because their role is both positive and sometimes can be negative. We are advocating for their involvement because they serve as guardrails. They are the first people to notice when things are going wrong because their colleagues know them as union people, so they don't include them in the envelopes. And they will quickly raise it. But unfortunately, through their own creation, because the thing ends with the governing council, their views can be ignored and they will announce it and then nobody will be able to interfere anymore. In those days where governing councils make recommendations of 3 for the consideration of the visitor, you can now listen to some of these petitions or these, but what I propose is a middle ground. Not to remove the autonomy of governing councils, but to have a stay period where you can also have some element of look at petitions or complaints and so on. Then they consider the negative one is that sometimes the unions can become overbearing. They want a particular candidate and they make things difficult. They can even cause crisis for a VC and you won't be able, even when you are appointed, you will not be able to govern. And finally, we also saw the issue of inclusiveness, the lack of inclusiveness. The odds are stacked against external candidates. I talked about that earlier. And until recently, even the women gender. So what are the consequences of this for university governance? First, I've talked about decline in quality. The influence of political interference and corruption typically results in appointment of subpar leaders, which can lead to poor governance and declines in academic standards. There is erosion of trust, and it serves as a major impediment to progress because ineffective leadership, due to described influences, impedes universities' abilities to innovate, to secure funding, to achieve academic and administrative goals, and it negatively impacts their overall reputation. These findings are consistent with many studies that I cited in the publication, and that phenomenon is growing, unfortunately. Implications of stakeholder engagement in university governance, which is what, since I adopted the stakeholder theory, and I highlighted them there to include enhanced accountability and transparency, integration of diverse perspectives, alignment with institutional goals, empowerment of the university stakeholders, mitigating conflicts and resistance. This is a major factor because each time you do a process and following it are all petitions and all manner of conflicts, it undermines the integrity not only of the process but even of the administration. Even if he survives, you would have sufficiently weakened him that he will not even command the respect of other staff members or even students. Because they will have read in the papers every day, everything about his life has been published and all manner of things. What are the limitations of this study? The scope. I studied only 20 universities, there are 80 of them, so issues around generalization. Then the usual subjectivity of qualitative data. When you talk to people, because it's based on perception, it's their view, it's their opinions, as against empirical evidence that you can compute. When you are talking about university performance, academic performance, for example, this can be calculated. Now I use perceptions, but in other studies, you can actually measure what has been their ranking over the years. And that's why I talked about longitudinal studies. How many first class, although first class has become another issue too, it's a story for another day, because particularly private universities now use first class as marketing tool. You have a class of 100 people, 50 of them have first class. They even have more first class than 2-2. But that's not for this lecture. So, you can actually focus on outcomes and not just the perceptions when you carry out research in a manner that you can measure academic performance, financial health, and stakeholder satisfaction. Contributions to knowledge. This study has significant implications for both theoretical frameworks and practical approaches in higher education governance. The study therefore contributes to the body of knowledge on leadership and governance of tertiary institutions, and as a guide for policymakers, for university administrators and stakeholders in enhancing governance structures and outcomes. So what are the contributions to theory? One is the development of governance theories. And this covers, first, it was able to reinforce the argument that effective governance is not solely dependent on established institutional structures, but also on the process by which leaders are chosen. This research aligns with and extends the concept of participatory governance. Many can study on that, suggesting that inclusive leadership selection can lead to better governance outcomes. It also provided an opportunity for the integration of stakeholder theory. The findings emphasize the relevance of stakeholder theory in university education leadership. The inclusion of diverse stakeholder perspectives in the leadership selection process enhances transparency and legitimacy, supporting the argument that universities should operate as collaborative entities that address the interests of various stakeholders. This integration can lead to the development of more comprehensive models of governance that will prioritize stakeholder engagement. Then insights into ethical leadership. And there's only about 10 pages in this report that I talked about ethical leadership. The research underscored the importance of ethical leadership in fostering a culture of integrity within universities. By exploring the negative impacts of political interference, nepotism, corruption, and all the things I mentioned, the study contributes to the development of theories surrounding ethical leadership. It suggests that leaders who embody ethical principles and advocate for transparent practices can enhance institutional integrity and trust. So what are some of the contributions for practical protocols in our tertiary institutions? Policy formulation. We need policy to emerge because the study highlights the need for policymakers to develop and implement clear, evidence-based policies that govern leadership selection processes. These policies should prioritize transparency, inclusivity, accountability, establishing a robust framework for appointments that can serve as a model for institutions across Nigeria. Also, enhancing leadership development programs. Because one of the things, when I come to the recommendation shortly, which will be the end of my presentation, you see, I'm advocating for continuous training. Leadership is not acquired in a day. If you imbue in the system a process where on a continual basis, you invest in leadership development programs that emphasize ethical governance and best practices, you will likely get a cadre of your personnel who can competitively now aspire to those positions. And they can also collectively contribute to the advancement of the institution. You can also begin to produce leaders for other universities who are not so endowed. I know some universities where they say they are parenting many other universities because 4 or 5 of their academic staff are serving as vice chancellors at the same time in other universities. Strengthening governance structures. The research reveals that effective governance requires not only leadership but also strong governance structures. It's the same thing we talk about our country, that we need strong institutions. So you need your governance structure to be strengthened. You should consider revising your framework to include clear guidelines for your leadership selection, the mechanisms for stakeholder involvement, and for the process of ensuring accountability both before and after the selection process. This will enable institutions to better address the complexities of leadership in the university system. Then I mentioned earlier the issue of the culture of inclusivity, issue of corruption and political interference, issue of academic research and community engagement. This is very important. And finally, I made some suggestions also for further studies, because I realized that the topic is so complex and so relevant that we need to look at it in further dimensions. Because this particular study provides a foundation for future research into the dynamics between leadership selection process and governance outcome. It invites further exploration into the impact of contextual factors, such as geographical challenges and socio-cultural influences on leadership effectiveness in higher education settings. Thus, broadening the theoretical discourse surrounding university governance. Areas for future research include longitudinal studies. I've mentioned that. Let us study a particular university for a long period, for a period spanning various terms of universities. Comparative studies, I tried to address that in this research already. An exploration of stakeholder dynamics. This is also important. We have not known how do our governing councils behave when they are carrying out this election process. Because we have internal members, we have external members, we have representatives of other entities that participate in the process, including the alumni association in some universities. How do they behave? How do they coalesce? Who leads the discussions? So we need to know so that we can find out where the trouble points are and be able to nip it in the bud. And then inclusion of effective leadership development program. I've mentioned that already. Integrating political and social changes. Again, we need to respond to what is happening in our environment. That when new government policies come in place, many people were not aware of the university guidelines until there was so much hue and cry. And then they now started looking at it. and see that, oh, there exists a template that was developed by the ministry and NUC. So we need to keep abreast of these changes. And then when government comes and makes a new rule, we should adjust accordingly. We need to also review the issue of underrepresentation of stakeholders. So now let me go to the recommendations, which will be the end of my submission today. I say from the study, there is a significant positive correlation between transparent and inclusive leadership selection processes and effective governance in Nigerian federal universities. Institutions that prioritize stakeholder engagement in their selection processes tend to exhibit enhanced accountability, trust, and overall governance effectiveness. For example, the research showed that some universities have experienced improved governance outcomes due to their commitment to inclusive practices. Inclusiveness means giving opportunities to all, inviting the participation of disadvantaged groups, including women, including minority groups within a larger majority, and so on. The impact on academic excellence and research productivity, as highlighted in the study, indicated that effective leadership selection directly influences academic excellence, research productivity, and innovation. Leaders selected through inclusive and transparent processes are more likely to implement policies that foster a supportive academic environment, to enhance research funding, and promote collaboration among faculty members. Federal universities that actively engage with their communities and stakeholders in the leadership selection process demonstrate a commitment to social responsibility and ethical governance. This engagement not only strengthens the legitimacy of leadership appointments, but also fosters a sense of ownership and involvement among various stakeholders, including students, faculty, and alumni. The research has identified significant challenges that hinder effective governance, particularly, as again, I've mentioned them so many times. These factors negatively impact the integrity of leadership selection process and consequently the overall governance of universities. So, premised on these findings, several practical steps and strategies are recommended for policymakers, university administrators, and stakeholders to address the identified challenges. These recommendations aim to enhance transparency, inclusivity, and accountability within leadership appointments, ultimately improving educational outcomes. So, and what are these recommendations? The first and most important, we must establish clear guidelines for leadership selection. The fact that this is only, if you see 3 different adverts, they are in different forms. Some will say they want professor of 7 years. Some say 10 years. Some will emphasize certain aspects, others will not. Some will say publication, others will say industry experience, and so on. We need clear guidelines. And these guidelines should be transparent, should be on the platform. I'm going to talk about technology as one of the recommendations. So that anybody who is going to aspire even 5, 10 years from now, they can see what those criteria are and begin to work towards it. It is not something that you ambush somebody with a week or sometimes governing councils debate about what template you are going to use, and the governing council chairman is keeping it very closely to his chest until the day of the meeting he will just confront members with it. That shouldn't be the case. Selection should not be by ambush. It should be an open process. So we need a policy document. For policy development, policy makers should establish and enforce clear, standardized guidelines for the leadership selection process. These guidelines should outline the procedures for appointments, the criteria for qualifications, and the mechanisms for stakeholder involvement. 2, it should be publicly accessible. Ensure that these guidelines are publicly accessible, allowing all stakeholders, including students, faculty, alumni, and the community, to understand the selection criteria and processes. One of the questions I asked in my questionnaire is, are you familiar with the selection process in your university? Only 12%, including lecturers. We are not familiar with the selection process. They only know that there will be advertisement and you have to be a professor. All the other factors they are unknown to them. And some candidates confirm that in the other question, what I say, why are you not aware? How do you think you can improve? Some suggested they only became aware when they became a candidate or when they started aspiring for the position. This should start early in your academic life. Then the second recommendation is that, again, we should promote stakeholders' engagement. We need inclusive committees. University administration should create diverse search committees for leadership positions that include representatives from various stakeholder groups, such as faculty, students, alumni, and even your industry partners. The diversity will foster broader perspectives and increase the legitimacy of the selection process. You should conduct surveys and forums. That's what they're doing. That's what they do in Bayero. They will have a forum. Regularly conduct surveys and hold forums to gather input from stakeholders regarding desired qualities and qualifications and even the improvements to make to the existing selection process. Because as a university grows, your needs begin to change. Your areas of focus, where you want to emphasize, if you have so many abandoned projects, you need somebody who can actually attract funding. It becomes a major criteria for you. If you are in a growth system, you are going to be housing a multipurpose research lab very soon. For you to be able to effectively use that laboratory, you need industry partners. Somebody who has capacity to engage with the private sector, to attract investment, research grants, funding from private sector will become a major criteria. So you increase the weighting of that score in your own selection template. And that is how universities can become dynamic. You can take back your university back when they know that that template to be used is going to be developed by the university community, and there is a shared acceptance of the process leading to it. And it will come to the outgoing vice chancellor. You have only one term, so you really don't have any major stake. And you can now pass it on to governing council as this is the wish and desire of the university community, of the university stakeholders. They will be conscious. When they are trying to change it, they will know they are inviting rebellion. The next is that we should implement a transparent process. First, public announcement. We are doing that in the papers. Some universities are even beginning to use some fringe newspapers, and the ones that do not have national coverage, but we should make it as transparent as possible. All leadership vacancies should be publicly announced, detailing the qualifications and application procedures. The openness ensures that a wider pool of candidates can apply for leadership positions. Then there should also be transparency in decision-making. The decision-making process for this should be transparent with clear documentation of the rationale behind selection made by governing bodies. The role of the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Governing Council as also chair of the selection committee should be reviewed. I have said this earlier. It shouldn't happen. Then we should leverage on technology. Technology is a leveler. It is also the panacea for openness. Implement centralized application system with a dedicated online platform which allows for document uploads and real-time tracking of the status of applications. Because in many universities, if an external candidate, suddenly some things are missing from your application, when it is online and there, if anything gets missing, people will see it. Electronic voting, yes, you heard me, electronic voting. So that even if they give you an envelope, you can still vote and nobody will know what you voted. You need virtual town hall meetings. Let the candidates speak to the university community. Excuse me. When you have this town hall, they will interrogate them. What are your plans for the university? It's not only the council members that should know. The university stakeholders should know what the plan of a candidate is for the university. There should be online archiving and transparent reporting. This will enhance the integrity of the process. Also, vital are blockchain technology so that the records cannot be deleted or changed. You need a secure voting platform. We also need even to leverage on technology in the area of data analytics so that you can get insights on the performance of some of these candidates. And you also need to develop metrics for evaluation over a period. When you were head of department, what did you do? When you became dean, what were your major accomplishments? Did you have any case from the university you are coming from? Have you been involved in exam malpractice or molesting female listening before? And so that we can track everything about both your academic qualifications and also your character over time. I've had a situation where people who are protesting against a vice chancellor say 5 years ago he raped a 300 level student. Why didn't they find out? Why are you finding out now when the man has emerged as vice chancellor? So if we track their records over time, we'll be able to say this person is not fit and proper to even contest for the position. Then there must be regular audits. Universities should implement regular audits. This is part of ways of strengthening accountability. When we audit the process, the previous process, we'll be able to find out what mistakes have been made, and we can also reinforce the process in subsequent cases. Then feedback mechanisms. Establish feedback mechanisms that allow stakeholders to report grievances or concerns related to the leadership selection process. Institutions should take these reports seriously and address them promptly, because people get to know these things. And there are sometimes minority people on the committee. I had a situation where it was the ministry's member of the governing council that was being threatened. The lady ran somewhere and called me to say her, our process has been hijacked, so the governor is calling us to government house. True story. The governor is calling us to go to government house. And my people are saying if I don't go, they will know that I'm the black leg. And what should she do? I said, go and document whatever transpired there. And she did just that. And predictably, it was to influence the process. Somebody who knew he didn't come, have gone to tell the governor, and the governor was interested. He called them. The rest is history. Enhanced leadership training and development. I hinted at this earlier. We must consciously, and I want to even include it in your academic staff training and development. I am one of those who do not believe that our current academic staff training and development is doing done the right way. I know some people don't agree, but I strongly believe that we should begin to tailor our training to on-the-job efficiencies, skills that people need to perform at higher levels. We are not the parents, I apologize, my president, but we are not the parents of these people we are hiring. If a university needs a professor, advertise and hire a professor. If you need a PhD, advertise and hire a PhD. Before I leave, I'm going to move for the cancellation of this master's training under AST&D. Because I believe it is totally incongruous with what a university is supposed to be. Why do I need somebody to teach in a university? Apart from the graduate assistant that you have identified the best student or the first class that you want to retain. That's an internal process. Why should I now go and hire somebody with a BSc when what I need is a PhD? Then I become his foster parent. You hire him, you start paying him salary, he's not working for you. You send him to school to go and do masters. You pay his school, third fund pay his school fees. You are paying his salary, he's not contributing to the university. When you finish that master's program, maybe 1 year, third fund will insist on 1 year, the duration of the course that you went to do. You bring him again to be sponsored for PhD. He's not working for you. They are counting him among your staff. He's not putting anything back. Then you train him as his parent. He now goes for 3-4 years to do PhD. 3 months to the completion of that PhD, he starts a fight with third fund. I need more funding. And if you don't give me more funding, I'm not coming back. And he leaves. And you have invested resources, time, and energy on somebody that had no intention from day one of serving the university. So Let parents, we have student loan now, let them take loan and train themselves and acquire the qualifications that are needed for our education. And let's focus on this type of skills I'm talking about: leadership skill, creative skill, innovation, entrepreneurship. Let's teach our lecturers the things that they need to achieve their very best, rather than basic training, getting master's degrees, and so on. I'm not saying those trainings are not good, but they should finish before they apply to come to school, come and teach. Then mentorship initiatives. I'm coming to the end now. I just need 3 minutes more. Mentorship initiatives. We must create mentorship programs where experienced leaders can guide emerging leaders in understanding the dynamics of university governance and leadership best practices. If you saw what they were saying about my CV, I used to be SA to a permanent secretary. And when you are an SA to a permanent secretary, you see everything. All the files, all the cases, every issue that involved that PAMSEC, you get to use it. You are aware, you are acquainted with it. So when I became PAMSEC, it was not that there was no learning curve. And they could give me a very big ministry immediately. So there must be a mentorship process where you can identify talent and begin to groom them and begin to encourage them, give them responsibilities so that we can build capacity. We should not wait and see this thing as dispensing favor. Then, again, we have to find a way of combating this corruption. I don't know how we are going to do it because our political leaders are also very strong. But one way is legislative reform. You see, if you can amend some of these laws and we engrave some of these things we want in the amended act, ASU can help us lead that fight, but don't fight through strike, I beg. But you can lead that effort. We will join you too. Let's make some changes into our law that will restore autonomy to our system. And this autonomy is not just to council, it is to the university community. Each university should have, because the collective interest of the community is what should be served. Then, whistleblower protection. We must encourage people to give information, to share, but it should not be used for blackmail. So we should create avenue. Once you don't give them the proper avenue to do it, and you don't protect them, the tendency is they take it out, and sometimes what they take out is the wrong information. But let us establish very robust protections for whistleblowers to encourage reporting of corruption and unethical practices in the selection process without fear of intimidation or victimization. Then finally, we should foster a culture of integrity and ethics in our schools. So we need an ethical standards framework. Develop and communicate a clear framework of ethical standards and integrity expected from leaders within federal universities. The framework should be integrated into the selection process and reinforced through induction programs and the training that I talked about. Then there must be recognition programs, because the beauty about recognition programs, it already begins to set the map. You begin to see it. So if you have won prizes in the university in the last 5-10 years, in various capacities in which you serve, you're already on the path to showing that this is an exceptional staff or an exceptional academic. So we should recognize people whenever we can, introduce recognition programs that highlight and reward ethical leadership and excellence within universities. Somebody attracted a big grant for the university. We should celebrate it. Such a person should be celebrated. In my office every month, we have staff. And anyone that does anything extraordinary or represents us very well, even in sports, we recognize them. Because you want to encourage other people to copy. If you want a similar recognition, go and do what he did. And that's how you even enhance productivity and performance. So in conclusion, I know we've been here for a while. I said, by implementing these recommendations, federal universities in Nigeria can significantly enhance their leadership selection processes, resulting in improved governance, enhanced academic integrity, and better educational outcomes. These strategies not only aim to solve the immediate challenges identified in the research, but also serve to build a sustainable framework for leadership excellence that aligns with the values and the aspirations of the academic community. Collectively, these efforts will foster an environment in which universities can thrive. It can empower them to fulfill their foundational mission of providing quality education and contributing positively to the development of our society and of our country. I want to sincerely thank the Vice Chancellor, the Governing Council, the Senate, for their gesture of approving my thesis, the leadership and the faculty of the Abuja Leadership Center, my mentor, Professor Moti, and all the other staff through the various stages of review, my colleagues in the office, all my friends and well-wishers for the opportunity to serve, to carry out this exercise, and to make this presentation today. Thank you for your very kind attention. God bless you all.
Wow. That start is very appropriate. Please, let's keep it on until our guest lecturer has a seat. Keep it up, please. It's a well-deserved one. What he has done, for over 1 hour, our guest lecturer has taken us through our historical analysis and empirical evidence. The intricate relationship between leadership selection and governance outcome in our universities. Of course, in the shortest possible time, our distinguished cousins will be coming on to the podium to analyze and give deeper insights into this beautiful lecture that our guest lecturer has just given to us. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as it says, please join me again in giving a resounding round of applause to the guest lecturer. Thank you so much for this beautiful lecture. Well, before we proceed, let me quickly use this opportunity to recognize the presence of some of our distinguished personalities. Please kindly sit. Thank you so much. I would like to recognize the presence of some of our distinguished personalities who are here. Seated, I would like to welcome Professor Abubakar Suleiman Olarewaju, the Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, NILS, who is here ably represented by Dr. Shuaibu Danwanka, Director Legal Services of the Institute. The Chief Executive Officer of the Public Service Institute of Nigeria, Barrister Ime Okon, is also here, ably represented by the Head of Media and Protocol, Mrs. Alheri Davo. The Honorable Member of House of Representatives, representing Edo State, Honorable Dr. Abdul S. Oro, please let's appreciate him. The Deputy Controller General of Nigeria Correctional Service, my Adagiri, is also here. Please, another round of applause for ourselves. Well, at this juncture, we shall take a brief cultural interlude and to showcase the richness of our university cultural heritage and creative talents. We shall be inviting the University of Abuja, our theater dance group, that will be presenting to us Eve Dance. Of course, this promises to be very exciting and interesting, and I will call on every one of you to sit down and enjoy. It is a theater group of our university, and thank you so much. You will like to enjoy yourself for the next 1 or 2 minutes before we get to the. You're welcome. Wow, what a thrilling performance. Wonderful dance, what a thrilling performance. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Theatre Arts Group of the University of Abuja. Thank you so much. Wow, thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Wow, please a round of applause for them. Wow, quite delightful performance there from the Theatre Arts Group of the University of Abuja. This was the Steve dance, and I learned that not a single member of that beautiful troupe is Steve, not even the drummers. That's quite interesting. Please, let's have another round of applause for them. It tells you that our Theatre Arts Group is very versatile and diverse. They can get into anywhere, and then they will thrill you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed to the discussion session, an interactive segment, which will afford us the opportunity to listen to our discussant move with further insights, the beautiful presentation of our guest lecturer. To moderate this session, we are privileged to have a well-known and accomplished journalist and broadcaster and media consultant who is also the executive director of the Progressive Impact Organization of Community Development. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Augustine Agbosu Remy. He will be inviting the discussants, very able, capable scholars, who will be dissecting the guest lecturers. Please, another round of applause for him as he takes his seat. Yes.
Hello. It's not loud. Is it loud enough? Tell him to open it. I'm going to talk now. Hello. Hello. I want to speak from there first. I want to speak from there and then walk here. Okay, I should sit down. Okay. That's going to be very tight, but it's okay. We'll manage it. We'll manage it. Hello. Yeah, that's fine now. That's fine now. Hello.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the stage is set for our discussants to be invited to the podium at any moment as they are set for this very important discussion. Please, let's give another round of applause to them. Of course, the moderator is already seated and he's prepared to take it off from here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to crave your indulgence for me to sit on existing protocol. The time is very, very tight for this very discussion. The Vice Chancellor and the other eminent, very senior distinguished citizens seated here, including the lecturer himself. I will go straight away to invite the panelists to take their seat. Then I'll go on ahead to establish the rules. And I want to also say that we have the opportunity during this session to contribute. So it is not going to be a top of the table discussion. It is going to be one that everybody will be interactive. Of course, we have listened to the very deep results of research that was brought out just now. So we expect that this session is going to be very, very interactive. We'll try to make it less stormy because it's like the university itself, like somebody beginning at home with the kind of research that is done here. And the larger expectation is that the university is going to benefit copiously from it, as we call. Let me call on Professor Musa Kasim Waziri to join here. And as he comes in, I will tell you who he is. Professor Kasim Musa Waziri is a professor of law in the Department of Public Law, Faculty of Law, University of Abuja. Anyway, he attended LEA Primary School in New Busau and had his secondary education in Bogu Secondary School, New Busau as well. He obtained his first degree from the University of Maiduguri and his LLM and PhD from the University of Jos. His research interest is on intellectual property law, competitive law, and international economic law. He has published over 50 peer-reviewed papers in reputable national and international journals and has presented scientific papers in several journals and international conferences. He was at different times the head of department, deputy dean of law, director, consultancy services, amongst others, positions of responsibility. He is currently the dean, School of Postgraduate Studies. Pleasure to welcome him here. And the second discussant who is joining him right away, as I also tell you who he is Professor Otaki Alalana Osana. Professor Osana Alalana had his secondary education in Doma, Nasarawa State, and his first, secondary, and third degree in the University of Jos, University of Maiduguri, and University of Abuja, respectively. In the course of his career, he has held various academic administrative positions, which include HOD Sociology, Dean of Students Affairs, Director Development Office, Member Governing Council, University of Abuja. He was also, do I say he was a politician? No. He was Commissioner of Agriculture, Nasarawa State. So does that qualify him to be a politician? He is a professor of community change and development studies with 32 years of teaching and research experience. You are welcome to sit with us. And the third discussant I have with me is Professor Dahida Phillips. Dahida D. Phillips Thank you, thank you, thank you. Professor Daida Phillips, a distinguished professor of public administration at the University of Abuja here with over 2 decades of experience in teaching, research, policy analysis, governance, and university administration. Renowned for his expertise in public administration, public policy, governance, leadership, and development administration, he has made significant contributions to academic scholarship, institutional development, and public sector reforms in Nigeria. Since joining the University of Abuja in 2008, he has risen through the academic ranks to become a professor of public administration in 2019. And his specialization is in policy analysis, local governance, and development administration. He has served in several strategic leadership positions, including, maybe that is why the ovation was loud, including he was the immediate director of Abuja Leadership Center, the tech fund, several. So he and the other former leaders of this center laid the foundation for what we are having today. Welcome. The summary of what we have here today is very simple. It is one that we talk about from the lecture that we had. We could break it just into 3, but we'll make the first 2. The challenges, consequences, and recommendations. Challenges, consequences, and recommendations. And for the purpose of this discussion, we will group the first challenges and consequences together, and then we take recommendations separately so that we can. I don't know why this thing is hauling back, but we just have to make do with it. Now, I want to begin from taking a look at the objective so that we all are guided. And it is not far from the objective the institution has set for this dialogue, to foster an engaging dialogue on key findings of study regarding leadership selection processes and governance in Nigerian federal universities, offering insights and potential solutions. So this is in a nutshell what we are. And the 3 key areas, like I said, of focus for the purpose of what we want to talk about. We are looking at higher education policy, leadership and governance, educational equity and inclusivity. So let's begin from my far right. Let me begin from my far right, Professor Waziri. We listened to the lecturer and the researcher who came up with very, very deep insight into what our universities should look like if recommendations and his findings are taken. Now let's quickly take a look at the relationship between leadership selection and governance outcomes and highlighting the impact of ineffective practices of academic performance and institutional integrity. Let's have you take the first shot.
Thank you very much, my Vice Chancellor, the guest lecturer, General Onoja, happy to see you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's interesting what I saw today. Dr. Echono has shown how versatile he is. When I read his paper, I concluded that, look, civil servants don't say the truth. They will never expose anything. Let's just go. But when he presented, he showed the vast of experience that you have We pray that the good Lord will keep you so that we continue to gain from your past experience. The paper have said much about your findings, which are apt, about your recommendations, which are very interesting, and it's from someone who has the experience of university governance in Nigeria. Some of us have some experiences. My presentation here will not be about my university. Where it is affecting my university directly, I will give that example. One of the experiences that were found over time, especially that the research is from 1993 to 2024. The problem that one of the issues that we have in university governance is the appointment of external members of council, especially pro-chancellors. The ability of the government to be appointing politicians to universities is destructive to university governance and development. If you look at, I will give you two examples. We've just finished ABU selection process. The outcome reflects, the peaceful outcome reflects who is the council chairman. University of Jos is coming to have a selection process. You will see that it will be seamless because Jega is the chairman there. University, the recent problems we're having in selection system in universities came up because of the nature of who are selected as members of the governing council, especially the chairman. I personally intend, I'm happy that ASU chairman is here, president is here, sir. I personally intend to write a memo, even if it will not be read, to the minister as my contribution, because the two young ministers have done very well in managing education, and I think this is an area. The second aspect is delay in appointing councils, where councils expires. Ministry of government find this very difficult, and that shows they did not take managing university education seriously. The delay from our experience cause untoward damage because power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we've gotten that example in this university. Now, you made mention another issue which you have raised about nepotism finding its way into academics, about tribalism finding its way into academics. It goes again to affect the performance of internal members of council. Because the university system and the university law is created to be able to prove and give checks and balances. Most of the examples that the guest lecturer brought in terms of what is happening is because those checks and balances are missing. For example, the law says for selection, there will be 2 members of council and gave who could be qualified to be members of council at that board, and 2 members of senate who are not members of council. The aim is not for joke, it's for checks and balances. But where internal members go to council and form cult group with external members, it undermines the integrity of the selection and undermines the governance system in the university. Thank you. Is my time up?
Yeah, we'll come back to you definitely.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you, but let me get to Professor Otaki Osana. He has opened up on external interference, and that is at the core of the paper that was actually presented of the research, political interference and the consequences of ethnic influence on leadership selection. The interference is not just political. Like he explained, there are parts of Nigeria today where even to get a pastor for a church, they have to look at his own where is he from? Is the governor, those who are contesting, going to be, are they Catholic or are they Anglican? Now, give me your insight from what you have heard on how this external influence, cutting across board, affect the selection process.
Thank you very much. Let me first of all commend the author, Dr. Echono, and my colleague. 3 things are involved here. 1, the challenge of political interference. 2, ethnicity. 3, funding. Now, if you look at accreditation report that got to from the National Universities Commission, good enough, I am currently the Director of Academic Planning. One thing that kept recurring in the report of the visiting team has been underfunding. Universities all over the country are underfunded, and that is what the presenter was trying to educate us, that there is need for government to improve on the funding status of the university. Because without funding, there is no way university can function effectively. Number 2, the funding is not just about promoting research, promoting excellence, paying salary, and so on, but to also compensate probably land that would have been taken by the university for development. So universities like Lagos, universities like Kefi, Abuja, we know the much the university here had to generate internal revenue to pay compensation, including government where the government fails. And for the government interference or external interference, well, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. Whatever they want to do, it is their university. But what we are saying is that the appointment of vice chancellor must be moderated in such a way that you get the best for the university. You cannot draw anybody in and say, look, this person is the right person for you. Imposition is what we are also fighting against. So universities are for government. Government can, appoint the vice chancellors, but it should be appointment based on merit, based on credibility, based on integrity, so that the result can be very obvious for everybody to see. On the ethnicity, we're in this university. Appointment of vice chancellor has been ushered by ethnic groups. They come in with elaborate drumbeat and insist that it is their turn. Villagers determine who become their VC, particularly if a university is appointed in a local community. So we have to guard against this, that university will promote development in the community, but influencing the appointment of the vice chancellor because the university is located in their locality is something that we must fight against.
All right.
And the moment that is not done, it will affect productivity, it will affect excellence in the university system. These are few things we have to do. Here in the university, when a vice chancellor is appointed, the ethnic group will come with drums. The ethnic group will come with masquerade, that it is their time, it is their turn, and then usher in the vice chancellor with so many drum beats. This must be discouraged, because with that, anything the vice chancellor can do, he knows that there are people behind him, and we definitely encourage him to do everything that will jettison development in the university. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we are going to continue from there with Professor Dahida. At the junction of trying to balance, of course, all of us understand that Nigeria is a multi-ethnic society, and organizations like the National Youth Service Corps, events like appointments, if you have the six geopolitical zones, you have to have a president. The president will have to have a vice president from one part of the country to the other. It's rooted in the federal character principles of the government to keep us together, to create a sense of belonging for everyone. Like the researcher said, he said this has been grossly abused in the appointment of the leaders and heads of the university system. Professor Dahida, let's take a look at this principle. How do we take it down our throat that even when we want to get united, we want to get united on the basis of not sacrificing it on the altar of merit? And how is it that we are now not able to we have localized the appointments of so many things, including the vice chancellors and the other appointments? How do we run around this circle in accordance with this recommendation made?
Okay, thank you so very much. the Vice Chancellor, the guest speaker, and my audience. Before I make this particular discussion, let me make a remark that this particular lecture we are gathered here today is as a result of intellectual encouragement. And nobody was selected based on sentiments. For instance, the very day Echono was presenting his external defense, he was in full control of his thesis to the extent that even the external examiner was not even able to say anything. But I have to cool his tempers because we discovered that his level of ingenuity, dexterity, and educational modicum deposited in that thesis was very, very overwhelming. And I told him that we're going to provide another platform for you so that you can come and display your ingenuity, dexterity, with the modicum of understanding that you have about this particular governance process and all of that. And that is the reason why today we are here. And let me also disabuse the mind of listeners that Abuja Leadership Center, as the name implies, is a center of excellence. We have good number of students who are intellectually mobile inclined. For instance, he was selected by a board of Abuja Leadership Center, not by me. He was also not selected because he was a third form executive secretary. No, it was because of the title of his thesis and the work that he has done. And I think 4 others were also selected. There were 5. I think the next one was the Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, who wrote on climate change adaptability, and also one Terab, who wrote on diaspora remittances, on how, if that particular sector is harnessed very well, it can accumulate a lot of capital inflow in Nigeria to the extent that diaspora remittances can make us not even to borrow money from the World Bank, Chinese, and all of that. And he cited a lot of examples, like countries like India, where about 35% of their budgeting is funded from diaspora remittances. We selected him, including Orubebe, who also wrote on leadership crisis in Africa between the followers and leaders. He questioned that particular narrative that leaders are blamed, but without forgetting to realize that even followers need to be interrogated. So he said leaders shouldn't be blamed, but followers too need to be blamed. And the last one was one other woman who presented about Adire Ogun, which Adire Ogun, he said that space is very virgin, it has not been harvested. And as such, it has not been able to link to African intercontinental trade. And Nigeria is missing a lot of cash flow from that particular sector. So she was also selected. So if you look at all of this particular trajectory, it is a result of competent research-driven intellectual mobility and capability that these students were selected on merit for them to come and display their own ingenuity in this particular gathering. So it's not because he was a secretary of Tetron, not because of this personality, no. I want you to also understand that. Again, I think my successor will have forgotten that the past directors need to be acknowledged because they did a lot before this particular time. Professor Moti was here. Let me acknowledge you because I took over you as a director. Professor Faha, unfortunately, is not here, but we'll have to acknowledge him. Because without him, this student wouldn't have been here. He did a lot in making sure that they go through the coursework and all. And lastly, I think our lecturers from the center are also here. They have been doing marvelously very well. People like General Noja, Professor Banjo, and a host of others. So I will pledge all the center lecturers to stand up for recognition before we move forward. Please, center lecturers. Look at them there, yeah. So these are the cream. Yeah, these are the cream of intellectual gamut that we're able to teach these excellent students that are presented today. So, coming to the subject matter, you discussed about the issue of quota system and how we can be able to harvest that for governance efficiency and accountability. I think if you look at the page 3 of the guest lecturer disposition and understanding, he talked about in 1980s, after the attainment of democratic governance in Nigeria, that vice chancellor were selected across board and were posted to various respective universities other than their state of origin. That particular syndrome provided an opportunity of bringing inclusivity into the governance selection process of vice chancellor in Nigerian universities. Because I believe it was the Federal Ministry of Education or whatever that was in charge in selecting them and posting it to the various universities other than the state of origin. But ethnicity, regionalism, tribe, religion was taken into consideration. But today, I think part of the problem is that ASU too have overreached their boundaries. Because every time ASU is talking about autonomy, this autonomy that ASU have cried and have gotten to a certain level. Sometimes we also ask this question, this autonomy is for what and for what purpose? Sometimes this autonomy that ASU cry for is for the selfish gain and interest, and not for the fact that this autonomy can generate and bring out a governing council that can give us a good vice chancellor. Take for instance, just like you rightly said, if you go to most of the vice chancellors in the Southwest, people who are vice chancellors in Ibadan, Ife, and all of that, they are all people from that particular extraction. To the extent that even in Ife, if you are not even from Modakeke, it's even a problem for you. You may even be from that particular region as a Yoruba, but once you are not from Ife, Modakeke, and what have you, they will not even give you that particular opportunity for you to serve and all of that. Then go back to the far north. Who is now the current vice chancellor of Abuja area? Ahmadu Bello University, Kanu, and name it. Can you see anybody from Lagos to be given that particular opportunity? So I think we must also have to go back and revisit that to see whether, if not because of the autonomy that ASU have cried for, we'll have also given that opportunity that federal government should also be recruiting the university vice chancellor based on very accountable, transparent, and coherent process, and post them to the respective university rather than the state of origin. I think that will also dose down that particular issue. And the issue of marginalization, ethnicity, and all of that will be reduced. Because as it is now, if you go to Benue, and Edo Mama will never become a vice chancellor. Why? The other dominant tribe, who are the thief, will not allow it. So you can see all of these particular narrations. You discover that the leadership selection process and governance is not restricted only to federal universities. State universities are also, even the worst. And we are calling ourselves citizens of excellence, citizens of knowledge, and all of that. University is supposed to attract people from diverse ethnic background, nationalities from other parts of the world, so that you can come and contribute your research output, people to see, drive the process of educational development and attainment. But what we are practicing today, I don't think we are going to attain that, because this issue of ethnicity, religion has not been dosed down. So that's my question.
We'll come to the recommendations and discuss how we can achieve that. Because the whole essence of this study is not just an academic exercise, it is to bring about solutions. And the recommendations are very deep, but I'll quickly go back to Professor Waziri, because he talked about advertising, transparency in the dealings that will lead to appointments, national newspapers, such that even Nigerians who are abroad, for instance, who are very, very experienced, who are lecturing abroad, who have the credentials, they can also have the opportunity to even apply and say, look, I want to come back home, I want to contribute. But as it is now, I don't know if we can attract people from outside. I see principals of secondary schools who are recruited. I think if I want to personalize it, my son attended the secondary school here that his school principal was Mr. McLeod from Ghana, Canada, a secondary school. They recruited, they advertised and recruited the best persons. Can we get there with our universities, Professor Waziri?
It's a very difficult question, because we have become entrenched in this attitude. We have a history. University of Abuja has a history where the vice chancellor that emerges was searched. Search means you didn't apply. A committee will be set through the law to go and convince you to apply. That's the system of university. Based on your quality, based on your integrity, they will search you. Then you will reluctantly apply. We had a situation where that person came up and became a vice chancellor. But we are in an ambush. The presenter has talking enough on this. We have ambush situation. Advertisement will come. It will be internal and external advertisement. Professors are in the university. Populated, mainly they finish the advertisement. You will hear we must have internal member. We must have internal member now. And it baffles me where we are heading to, because what can even become a blackmail against me. You understand me? Because the contradiction is too much, and what have you. What entered and seized the university system, which is sad in an academic environment, is that certain primordial conditions are being brought that is inside the book. However, the universities, like Professor Dahid mentioned, you cannot be UK now and think if you are not in the system, you are going to be. You cannot go to Lagos. You cannot go to Ibadan. So that is how it has become what we are having. The only federal university existing in Nigeria today is the University of Abuja. But all other universities have been localized, and there's nothing we can do about it. In fact, there is no space. When you see advertisement, in fact, some universities, before advertisement, the CV of the candidate they want to be will be placed, and they will look at the CV and what have you, and then put the items, then before it will be released. So there's a group, before you say Jack Robinson, that CV will, in the selection process, will become number one. And here we are.
All right. Now, Professor Osana, when we talk about external influence, when we talk about people having interest in who becomes the vice chancellor of a university, it goes beyond just internal interest. We have seen people also protest that the governors, for instance, in the states, the president himself, and in fact, it was drummed in by this researcher that in some instances, political things are actually read into it. They are looking at elections. Who is going to be the returning officer in the next election in this area? It has to be somebody. So if there's any vacancy, they quickly bring in a professor who they know very well, who they want to be the returning officer. So how do we? I don't want to paint the picture of a hopelessness. I don't want to think that Professor Waziri, we should go away from this list and say it is not possible to drive back to where we were before. In terms of analyzing the recommendations and looking at the problem, what do you think?
Well, I have a different view, sir. First of all, the appointment of the vice chancellors begins with the appointment of the council chairman. It's a preliminary step towards appointing the kind of vice chancellor that is coming. And the issue of saying, well, if we put the vice chancellor, it should be somebody we can use for election rigging, for election returning officer, and so on. ASU has categorically said that any professor, any lecturer in the university that decides to go for national assignment for INEC is going on his own. He should not associate his involvement with ASU. That is made very clear. So if you are caught rigging election, ASU must not be involved. ASU must not be mentioned, and so on and so forth. But like I said, whoever pays the piper will dictate the tune. I tell you my own personal experience. I applied to a university in this country to become the vice chancellor. Based on the advert, I felt very qualified, eminently qualified, and I applied. I called one of my brothers, who was one time a vice chancellor in the Northeast. Let's do a small mock interview. Because he had the experience, we sat with him, we discussed what I should expect, and so on. So he asked if I had ever been invited for interview for a position of vice chancellor. I told him no. That okay, he's going to encourage me to go and face the motion. But that I should know I will not get it. because the governor of the state had already made up his mind to appoint a woman into that position as vice chancellor. And I said, okay, there was no point going for the interview. He said, no, I should go. It will teach me all the details of how and when to become whatever. All the problems, challenges involved, you will make a sense out of it before the next one. Just go. And of course, I went, and I faced the motion. Within 2 days or 3, the vice chancellor was announced, and it was a woman. So, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. The university is government property. But what we are saying is that they should allow the university to pick their own vice chancellor with little interference. If there is crisis, then government can come in and mediate. But if there is no crisis, allow the university to pick its, vice chancellor.
All right.
And then move ahead. This is what we're trying to explain. As far as appointment of VC is concerned, it's something that government has to interfere very minimally. If there is full interference, then we can't get the result of what we want.
All right.
And it will affect productivity. It will also affect the excellence.
All right. Thank you very much. We have recommendations already embedded inside the discussion. But I want Professor Philip Dahida to speak to transparency. Now, if 4 or 5 persons apply for the position of vice chancellor, and no matter who is taking, like the lecturer said, sometimes there are 3 that apply, and then the 3rd one is taken. Does the public, the university community, the general public, are they not entitled to know why the others were not taken, in terms of driving transparency into this? That is part of the researcher's recommendation.
Again, just like the researcher has said, you must have to make this particular guideline public. That is the first principle of transparency and accountability, so that people and the community should know the guidelines of the selection process, so that everybody can be able to track that. But when guidelines and processes are also hidden under the kitchen, how will there be a transparency and accountability in the process? So that is point number 1, that we must have to strengthen that particular instrumentality of making sure that those guidelines are released on time and are made public. He also talked about the issue of mobility in terms of technology, so that some of these particular guidelines should be posted on our various platforms. People can read and all of that. So if that happens, the people who are also going to involve themselves in the selection process are going to be very, very careful, because of the wider spread of the policy guideline that is already in place. And again, the Ministry of Education too needs to be very transparent about this particular guideline. We have several conflicting issues revolving on the issue of 10-year post-4-year experience. The Ministry of Education will say, okay, a professor will have 10 years. But if you come back to the university, the governing council will say, okay, 5 years is enough, 6 years is enough, and all of that. So based on that, we are seeing a lot of incoherent, non-transparent procedural principles that have taken place during various selection processes in Nigerian universities. If you go to some other universities, it's 5 years. If you go to other universities, it's 10 years. It depends on who the governing council chairman wants to pick. So those kind of issues should be avoided, so that the process must be what? Transparent. Apart from that, just like he said, faculty members, other stakeholders must also be involved, so that they can be able to also contribute to all of this. He also talked about the issue of BUK, where they have a consistent and procedure of selecting the vice chancellorship. So why can't we also adopt that? Right. What are they doing that is so different, so unique, that they also have a very seamless issue of selecting the vice chancellors? So I say our lesson should also be learned from BUK to see what they do. But I also know very well that the guest lecturer said they also engage stakeholders.
All right, let's take it to the floor, because our time is, the time I was given is almost going. Let's take it to the floor. I understand that there are a lot of people who want to take aspects, make contributions, and possibly also ask questions about it. If we have somebody taking the microphone round, we have somebody helping us to take the microphone.
The person that supervises,
yeah.
give it to
Good afternoon, everybody. The Vice Chancellor, sir, the guest speaker, members of the discussion team, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to this public lecture. To me, it is an idea whose time has come, and it's a powerful one. It's coming at a time when tertiary education in Nigeria, especially the university system, is at very crossroad in terms of the selection of its principal officers. I wonder very, very worrisomely why the crisis we experience today exists in the first place. In terms of selection, I can say conveniently here that the federal universities in Nigeria, as many as they are, they don't have common ground for selection of their leaders. The Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, and the rest. The Speaker has spoken. We experienced it some few months ago. And UNN at the same time was going through the same, when we were going the same way. Nnamdi Azikiwe University, same. I'm mentioning these ones because these are all federal universities. There is supposed to be a laid down common ground that will serve as norm, that governing council members and pro-chancellors, at the point of inauguration, they should be told, this is the way to go. Unfortunately, moderators, sir, we were meant to understand that during inauguration of governing councils, the handbook given to them serve as guidelines only. And the guidelines means you can go through this or you divert. And that's why they diverted. There are a lot of crises today, NUC cannot come up, own it, and say, this is what we want, and this is how we should go. Not even the Federal Ministry of Education, sir. The speaker, the guest speaker of today, mentioned this abnormal situation at that level. And from his profile I read, and whom I know him to be, I know him more before now. As a member of the Nigerian Academy of Education, I do go to his office with our team members. He is doing a lot. His name will be written in gold. Long.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I will call on him today. These are the ways through which,
all right, madam, I'm really sorry.
Yes. Sorry, 1 minute more.
No, not 1 minute. Just a few seconds, please.
A few seconds.
Just wrap up now.
This is the way theorists of old emerge.
All right, thank you.
When they begin to prescribe good conduct.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
From all you have done here, sir, I pray you that you take up this challenge.
All right, thank you.
Among government circles.
Thank you very much. It was deliberate on me to allow her to speak because she was helping us to balance the high table here. We didn't have a woman here, and I'm a woman rights activist. Let Abdul, Honorable Abdul, is right up there. Honorable Abdul is a man of different parts, a journalist, a lawyer, and he's also an alumni of the Abuja University Center. I heard that his thesis is the biggest thesis the University of Abuja has seen. So big, he did on elections.
Anyway, thank you very much for recognizing me. Let me say, I was a member of the Governing Council of the University of Calabar when Dr. Echono was Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Education. And then I saw what he has addressed, the issues he has addressed today. In fact, it's as if he picked that university as a case study in terms of what can go wrong in a system that is not properly managed. At the University of Calabar, the incumbent vice chancellor at the time we were appointed was running for Senate. even as a vice chancellor, he was contesting election for Senate. And to get him out, we were threatened by thugs. They said they are his boys, cultists, were threatening us when we wrote to him that he should take 3 months leave to go. Okay, and when they were going to appoint the new vice chancellor, it was zoned to the 3 senatorial districts of Cross River State, a federal university. What of other Nigerians who were qualified to come from different parts of the country and they wanted to be vice chancellor? We were told that this is the biggest economy in Cross River and I don't want to mess with it. But I don't want to go into details of how eventually
Please don't, because
somebody
of time.
emerged. But I would like to say that the consequences of such behavior can be very profound. I recall the Dean of Law, or the former Dean of Law, was suspended for molesting students, making it impossible for students to go to law school or failing their exams. And this dean eventually was suspended. He went to court. He came back. And when we were having council meeting, we were asked to take him back. Everybody was saying, oh, his mother came to talk to me. Oh, he's from EFIC. Oh, he's from this, he's from that. I said, no. VC, I want it on record that I'm opposed to his returning. But in less than a year, this guy molested more students. And then it came out in the newspapers. Shegu Adeni wrote a book about it. So there are consequences for it. Here at this university, let me talk about it.
Just 1 minute more.
This program, Abuja Leadership Center, was established in 2021. They have already have 3 directors. That is not 5 directors also. That is not stability. And within that period, we have had how many vice chancellors? I think this is the 3rd one. That is not stability. I think they should pick the recommendation of Dr. Echono and start being introspective and start implementing what he has just written. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Charity, they say, begins at home. So the University of Abuja should begin to implement the recommendations that is right here before us, before other universities start to take it. Let's give the microphone to General, please, in front. Sorry, please. Let the General speak first, then we'll come to you. Yeah. And General, if you will beg your indulgence, you can sit down, sir. If you don't want to, you can sit down.
Usually it's not the tradition of the military to sit down when the leader is here, the VC. If you don't mind, I will only take 5 minutes.
5 minutes might be too big for us.
Long.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. From the constituency where I'm coming from, we're not even used to talking for too long.
Okay, sir.
So I thank you. Mr. Vice Chancellor, all other protocols observed. I'm happy that I have 2 nephews here who called me uncle. That is the guest lecturer and the VC himself. I have not been in the university administration, so I have no experience. But what I want to talk about is charity begins at home. Yeah. The guest lecturer is the son of a Idoma nation that all of us are proud of. I'm not surprised that listening to him presenting his papers professorially, even though he's not yet a professor. He has contributed a lot to not only to the Idoma nation in terms of structure, buildings, schools. He even brought the College of Education to Idoma land. He is an asset not only to Idoma nation, but to the whole Nigeria. So my comments, I have a background in political science. if I'm talking and it gets too long, just give me a small piece of paper to say I should stop.
I actually wanted you to, because you are a man of so much vast experience.
Yeah.
Maybe during the military era, you were also a military governor and you had the opportunity to serve at various levels. And you can take us deep down to say, this is the experience of my time.
Yes.
That we should replicate and is in sync with what has happened with the paper that was delivered.
Yes, before it evaporates from my memory, let me make a request to the Vice Chancellor straight away that in 1996, when I presented a convocation lecture in University of Jos, as soon as I finished, 2 days later, the Senate, the University Senate, recommended that my thesis should be published into a book. And the title of the book is International Security in the Changing World. Today, that was my first book in 1997. And students are calling me from various universities, those who are doing masters in law and diplomacy. They're calling me and saying, oh, General, this thing you have written is helping us in what we're doing. Now to Echono. There's a Russian writer who said, except you get a PhD, you have not belonged to the League of Intellectuals. I listened to some lawyers and they said, oh, I'm learned, I'm very learned. And I asked one of them, who was the first master's degree holder in Benue State? He said he didn't know. I said, see, that is why you should go and do a research degree, that is a PhD. It is then that you get knowledge. And so you have to be educated. You may be learned, but you are not yet educated. I think Echono is extremely educated. Why? What is the strategic objective of PhD, which is a research degree? It is for, at the end of it, to come up with a unique knowledge after all your inquiries that will assist the country or your community in producing something that will assist in adopting the fact that there should be improvement in your society. I think that what he has read out today, it goes to contribute extremely to knowledge. And so we must commend him for that. Now, the only thing, very quickly, I'm sorry. Transparency is what I take, because that is what tinkles my fancy in all Echono has said. When Obama came to Ghana and they said, you have Ghana, why won't you go to Nigeria? Obama's response was, I will not go to Nigeria because Nigerians do not do election. That's what he said. They are not promoting democracy. Echono talked about transparency. I think it's becoming a disease. Transparency. Our country have to learn seriously how to be transparent in whatever we do. Otherwise, we cannot make any progress. And so I agree with Echono entirely. It's not only in the university system. In all our social institutions, transparency is like, we have to do something. I don't know whether it will be this generation, not our own generation anymore, because we're all corrupt in this generation. We're all corrupt. It's the next generation. How they will do it, I do not know. I have to pray to Almighty God to help Nigeria so that we can be transparent in whatever we do. We must try as much as possible to punish criminals. If you commit crime, you are punished. Otherwise, you are exposed to international ridicule.
All right.
So
Thank you,
I'm
Daddy.
I'm not a professor.
No, I know. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Thank
you very much. His thesis should be published. I'm recommending, I'm suggesting.
All right.
Because it's excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
On behalf of Ochidoma, I thank you and all those who have come here. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Pray that you don't have to kneel down before the traditional ruler to explain something and he disagrees with you. You will stay long on your knees. So let's take two more. Yeah, please go ahead. And can we make it as short as possible?
Our Vice Chancellor and Director of Studies and other distinguished guests. My name is Barrister Steve Asimobi. I'm a PhD student at the Leadership Center. I had to fly in from Owerri this morning to be a part of this conversation. And I can tell you, I am very, very, very glad and delighted to be here. I didn't want to say anything, but I listened to the lecture and I've listened to the discussants. And I think that beyond the importance of getting a credible vice chancellor in Nigerian universities, what is the bigger implication for our country, Nigeria? Especially in view of the upcoming 2027 general elections. Most times, like the man who delivered the lecture said today, Echono said, about how the attitude of some vice chancellors who have been sent to go as returning officers in national elections in this country, vis-a-vis the national acclaim of Professor Oti from Futo, who yesterday a street was named after her, getting awards left, right, and center. So beyond academics, a properly selected vice chancellor of any university will be a pride to the academia. So my question is, what in this conversation, can we extend it to recommend?
Just a summary, please.
Yes, can we recommend sanctions for university vice chancellors and other lecturers who are sent to go and be a part of the electoral process and they come out giving us election process that are not credible and all that. Thank you.
Thank God that the lecturer left an opening. Please take the microphone. No, please take the microphone. Gender balance. Regional balance is also important here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, and the Honorable Lecturer. My interventions are in the following
Just
areas.
as much as
One,
summary as possible.
I believe that as much as possible, the climate after the selection and appointment process should be as peaceful as possible. And every machinery, where he talked about stakeholders, should be put in place to prevent the university from being a litigious state or a litigious environment. Secondly, in the area of alumni relations, I pray that that gap within this university will be breached, where the lecturer talked about taking back the university system. We should also think about giving back to the university system through alumni relations.
Now, what I want to ensure is that the vice chancellor and the lecturer don't leave here until they have heard everybody. So in the next 5 minutes, we are concluding. Please take the microphone that way, and just give you one minute, please. Two of you, one minute, so that you can be heard. We can have a regional balance in the hall.
Thank you, moderator, for
promoting
regional balance.
Yes.
My name is Dr. Chime, and incidentally, I'm also a graduate of the Abuja Leadership Center. Mine was a PhD in public policy. I want to intervene on one of the recommendations, which it has to do with leadership training. Yes, the author recommends leadership training for potential candidates for the office of the Vice Chancellor. But before one becomes a Vice Chancellor, one must have gone through certain stages in the academic environment. So mine, quickly, is to say that the university, unfortunately, I'm a trainer for almost 30 years now. I that the university is one of the places that have very low budget for training, for leadership training. So I want to recommend that this leadership training should go for both academic and non-academic staff as a whole. Not just
right.
Then one other thing I want to say, please, quickly, as a lesson from is in addition for this public lecture series, I want to suggest ALC to do what we did in Enugu when we and the current governor of Anambra State started African Institute of Applied Economics. It's currently called the Heritage Institution. After his PhD, he called some of us. He said he wants to start a fellowship program.
Can we just summarize, please?
Now, the fellowship program, which I want to I recommend, is PhD students from ALC should come together and be, quarterly. This fellowship program, you invite us to make some invited lectures.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this will actually augur well for both the national.
Thank you very much.
So much.
The next person, please. I have taken an oath that I want the Vice Chancellor and the teacher and our lecturer to be here. I don't want to hold them down. Please make it 1 minute, just 1 minute.
Okay, so let me stand on existing protocol.
You are already standing on it.
My name is Yakin Abdul Malik. With respect to the university's issue, I think we should go back to the foundation of university. When I was graduating, we were letting somebody because he made first class. We knew he was supposed to be retained, and he was retained. 60% of the people who are contesting for VC-ship were retained, and they grew university. By the time they get to that level, I think they will do a little bit.
Okay, retaining knowledge and encouraging those who were encouraged to stay, they can become leaders for tomorrow. That's what so please get the microphone down here, and that will be our last intervention. I can see a political hat on top of his head, but don't mind. We don't want them to make any. We don't want them to scrap us here.
Thank you. The moderator.
Thank you, sir.
I listened with rapt attention when the ES was talking, and I'm highly impressed, not disappointed. You have laid some problem on the doorstep of politicians, and we should not shy away from it. We need people like Echono to be recommended to be delivering lectures at NILD, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. Because most of those people that are coming to be governors are one way or the other to be in the National Assembly. And if 360 plus out of the 109 should listen to this lecture, when they become the governor or deputy governor, we see some of them that will make use of it. And not only that, I will recommend that when they are having governors forums, things like that should be presented for the people. And that is how we can get solutions one way or the other.
All right, thank you. I warned you ahead. I told you it was going to be political. And he has told us it's political. Let's come back to the high table and conclude with please get the microphone, Professor Waziri. Let's take his last comments and recommendation. Let's have your last intervention and possibly something you think we have not touched on.
Well, it's on corruption.
Okay.
It's a national malaise, but corruption in the university system is more dangerous, and it is affecting university leadership and administration. I'm very happy it is the executive secretary that did this beautiful job, and he was former PAM secretary In fact, his palm secretary life, he spent most of it in the Ministry of Education, and he has exhibited that. Now, I want to talk about corruption, and that is affecting leadership.
Yeah, just
I will give you one example. In the temporary site, we have a law theater just like this one. It was built during PTF Buhari's time. You can imagine what year Buhari did that. We are using it, we used it for how many years? Around 2024, they came and painted it and put third fund 2014. PTF built it. PTF died. They put third fund 2014. Is there now. This theater and my office was built 2021-22 by the fourth council chairman. Late last year and early this year, it was repainted and put a third fund 2025. Now these are issues.
Maybe it is the paint.
I'm not looking for maybe. Now we're talking about corruption in university. What has been done to bring third fund is one of the greatest things that can be done to university system. But there are in-betweens that are killing the system. When I was in selection board, elected into selection board, a contractor called.
All right.
Just 30 seconds.
Okay.
A contractor called me, where this gave me all the praises. I was playing along until I knew. If you see what he was promising me, just because he wants to influence who becomes the vice chancellor.
Right.
And if those things happen, definitely most of the vice chancellors will never know peace.
All right.
I thank God our vice chancellor is not in that way.
All right.
Thank you.
Now that third fund is here, please, anytime you renovate a building, say renovated by third fund, so that they know it's only the paint you put there. Let me come to Professor Osana. What we have not talked about, what are the things you have been running on your mind is we have not talked about it as you summarize? Just 1 minute, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. What I think the speaker should include, if he's going to publish this work, is the organizational culture in the university system. The processes are the same. Advert, yes. Selection, yes. Picking the best, yes. Based on merit, yes. Government influence, yes. But there is one hidden thing. That is organizational culture. What is this organizational culture? There are certain secret things in the university amongst the staff that we need to understand. And then how this influences the appointment of the vice chancellor.
All right.
This we should take it.
All right.
It's very important. So you may not understand what I mean, sir. Let me just say a word again to it. If you look at Japan, the secret about Japan's development is because they have this secret, organizational culture. During break, they go to sit and reflect on certain things they know is good for them and can promote development organizations. Here we have our own culture. What is it that is unique to us as university staff? What is it that is unique to us as University of Abuja? It may not be the same all over. So there is need to also capture this in our recommendation.
All right.
Then ask government to interfere, but very minimally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And lastly, let's hear from Professor Dahida, something that has not been quite emphasized here, that you think nobody should go away from here without us taking a look at it.
Anyway, the author have made a lot of recommendations. And if you look at the research he did, the research reveals that most of the selection processes were faulty. And a takeaway that I want to draw our attention to that is that the issue of checks and balances in terms of tracking achievements in the selection process. Tracking achievement in the sense that when this person was the examination officer, what was his achievement? When he was exam officer, how many marks are we going to attract to him? Not only because he was exam officer, but because of the performances. What he did. As head of department, what did he do? Dean of faculty, deputy vice chancellors. But today, they allocate marks just because he held those positions. But how are we going to measure?
Sorry. Is it possible? Is this also a criteria that can be taken for people who are applying from the outside? Because it's like we are localizing it. What about those who are
the
applying
issue
from
is
outside?
that even if you apply from outside, you will have worked elsewhere in the university system, and you must ascend the rank to become a professor. Before you became a professor, you must have passed through certain ranks, and organizational structure demand that you must have done head of department, examination officer, level coordinator, dean of faculties. So what are these particular templates and metrics are we going to use to measure those performances?
All right.
We must have to indicate them.
Thank you very much. He has added. We must appreciate everyone. Thank you, everyone, for this very warm participation. I will just say that the summary of all that we have talked about in this session is adhering strictly to a guideline that is not in existence. So first of all, we have to set strict guidelines, clear guidelines, as the author said, our researcher said clear guidelines. If you want 7 years is what is needed, let it be 7 years. If you want to say paper presentation, how many papers? And if you want to say there are policy documents or clear procedures, and then there should be transparency in all of it. Professor Kazim Waziri, I want to thank you for being on this panel. Professor Taka Alana Sana, thank you. And Professor Philip. One man I also probably we played down is Professor Moti, who supervised this work. I think we should give him please. Yes, thank you so much. And I must also reveal that I'm also privileged that he's the one supervising my work at the Abuja Leadership Center. So, thank you so much. So I have said that you don't place a trap ahead of me when I'm coming. So we must appreciate everyone here. We thank you for being part of it. I am looking forward to seeing the document as was recommended by General, that this should be put in the document that we can circulate around. And it is not just circulating it around. If it is possible to get it published, and so that every university governing council can have a copy. And if there are other possible fora, I will discuss with his aides to see how we can also take this to the media. Let him sit down and educate people in media houses on these findings, so that the message can go very, very far. I am privileged to have been given the opportunity by the director of the center to do this today, and I have to appreciate everyone for listening to us. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this beautiful segment, the discussion segment, and that of the interactive session. We thank Mr. Augustine Abosuremi for effectively moderating this, and we also thank the discussants for their very brilliant and insightful remarks. On this note, please, I would especially appeal to you to give them another resounding round of applause. Well, we don't have much time, and so we need to get this done as quickly as possible as a mark of appreciation to our distinguished guest lecturer. The university will be making a presentation of a commemorative plaque to him. I'm talking about the executive secretary who has just delivered that beautiful address. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's welcome to the podium the Vice Chancellor of our great university, Professor Hakeem Ababatunde Fayemi, who will be making the presentation to the executive secretary. Yes, sir.
University
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Governing Council, Senate management, staff, and students of the University of Abuja, now Yakubu Gowon University, I want to thank our very distinguished speaker for today, for that wonderful erudition, that wonderful lecture. We have received it in great stride. Thank you very much, sir. I want to announce, when you finish the lecture, I said, after you finish, not even after you finish, while you are still Executive Secretary of Third Fund, don't be surprised, appointment as Chairman of Governing Council. For private universities, federal, maybe two at the same time, or the eminent Minister of Education, I will not be surprised. So we thank you, sir, for that wonderful lecture. That work should be put in form of a book or manuscript for the intellectual edification of our staff and students, and for wide readability. So on that note, as a mark of love and respect, I want to give this award to you and to notify you that the university is going to appoint you from today henceforth as a visiting scholar to the University of Abuja, now Yakubu Gowon University. It is our hope that while you continue to be Executive Secretary, we'll continue to, from your wealth of experience and knowledge. When you complete that process, we'll be waiting to receive you. Maybe we'll give you an office where you could sit in and carry out your duties. So we thank you for this great work you've done today and this wonderful presentation. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, please. Thank you, sir. Another round of applause, please. We're almost rounding off this program. We would like to announce that the Executive Secretary and the Vice Chancellor are opening the team and the delegation to the board, the faculty board of the boardroom, the boardroom of the Faculty of Law for their lunch. But before that, may I have the honor and privilege of inviting the Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration to come forward and give a vote of thanks. Professor.
Okay, on behalf of the university community, we will first thank our guest lecturer, Dr. Sunday Echono. There is a team we have not recognized, the home front of the guest lecturer. I have not had anyone calling them here. The guest lecturer, we want to thank your home front, because when you were burning the candles in the night, I am quite sure you had the support of the home front. If they are here, please, we want them to stand up for recognition. The home front of the guest lecturer. Are they here? We thank you for supporting him. We also thank the moral support we received from the Governing Council under the chairmanship of Dr. Tejosu. We thank the Vice Chancellor for his support. We thank the University Management, Principal Officers. We thank those who offer interventions in various ways, the discussants and the anchor, the directors, deans, the provost of the CHS, heads of department, the entire community, and the audience for coming. We wish everyone who has come from far and near safe trip back home. We thank you all for coming. Thank you, and God bless.
Hello, please, just an announcement, please. The usher will lead our special guest to the